he floats it ahead. Too far for Braden to be able to get onto it before the goalie played it. And it's coming back to Dobson as Shen tries to get back to defend. Horvat's over the line to Brock Nelson as a man back door. Pad save, Binnington. The puck poked along the goal line. Rebound to the far corner. Nelson put it on. Binnington there again. And the St. Louis Blues goaltender getting it done on the penalty kill. They move it ahead. Breakaway. Lee shooting and a save by Binnington. Islanders hold the puck in. Shoot it on. And Riley with a save. Binnington, a groin ripper, got the pad down and knocked that one away. Floats it into the middle. That's intercepted by Barzal, and it's 2-on-1 in on Perunovic. Dobson joining the rush. Back to Barzal to the goal. And what a save! Right into the glove on the left hand of Binnington. And he has just been outstanding tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's been our backbone for years now, and you know, especially early on the PK, made some big saves to keep it 0-0, and we kind of built off the momentum, and you know, at the end there, we got to do a better job of closing it out for him. He fought the whole way for us, and we gave him too many chances at the end of the game. So, but yeah, he was great all night.
I understand last night the Blues have a natural hat trick.
Same thing.
By Pavel Buchnevich. That was not the headline of that game. The headline of the game has been the headline of the Blues season. It is that Jordan Binnington once again buys you time to get your offense going, and by the end of that game, you come away with a 4-0 win against the New York Islanders to finish out this homestand. Jordan Binnington has been nothing short of outstanding over the course of the last month of the season. Alex, since you have had the change with the head coach, and I don't think it's a one-for-one direct reflection of changing from Craig Berube to Drew Bannister, but just using that as the end point for talking about Jordan Binnington, he has been amazing over the course of the last really 6 weeks or so now. Alex, last night was just simply the latest example of this. Another shutout for him, saved all 38 shots against. His job that he did last night on the penalty kill, they always talk about how your goalie has to be your best penalty killer. He was that for the Blues last night. Some of the saves that he made, especially the late glove save, just absolutely amazing. This is your guy, Alex. He is playing, I believe, the best that we have seen him since the Stanley Cup run. What are you watching right now from Jordan Binnington?
I'm watching a goalie who is going to be able to carry a team into the playoffs, and he ties Curtis Joseph last night for all-time wins. And somebody texted in post-game when we were talking last night, and they said, whoa, pump the brakes on the Cujo comps. And originally I was like, who's comping him to Cujo? But then I thought about it more, and I said, wait a minute. You're not comping him to Cujo. He just tied Curtis Joseph during his tenure with the St. Louis Blues. And someone also made a great point on postgame saying, in 20 years, we're going to be comparing goaltenders for the St. Louis Blues to what Jordan Binnington has done for this St. Louis Blues team. And the part that really got me last night was he joins 8 other goalies who have gotten to 20 games this season, 20 wins this season. The Thatcher Demko, Alex Georgiev, Bobrovsky, Hellebuck, Stuart Skinner, Shesterkin, Saros, Jake Ottinger, Jordan Binnington. Of all of those names that I just told you, he's got the 4th best save percentage of those goalies. The only guys that are better than him are Thatcher Demko, Sergei Bobrovsky, and Connor Hellebuck. And he's 4th in high danger, saves above expected goals, which he's below those 3 guys. He's not a top 10 goaltender. Right now, he's playing like a top 5 goaltender in the National Hockey League. And Thomas is right. He is the backbone to the St. Louis Blues team. You could sit there and talk about, well, man, what could you get for a Jordan Binnington if you trade him? You don't trade Jordan Binnington, because if this team was relying on other goaltenders to make certain saves like they did in the first period on the penalty kill, or late in the game when they're turning the pucks over and it's going the other way with a breakaway, you're probably letting some of those goals in, which means some of these guys have deflated confidence because their mistakes are glaring holes for this team. That's not the case with a Jordan Binnington. So I'm witnessing something right now that Blues fans need to understand. It was about 30 years of asking who the next goaltender was going to be for the Blues, and you've got somebody that I would say 6 teams right now between the Eastern and Western Conference would sit there and say, we need that guy to win a Stanley Cup.
He saved last night 16 shots while the other team was on the power play. Think about that for a second. Think about the quality of shots. There's that fancy number of goals saved above average. I don't know what it was exactly last night for Jordan Binnington.
I think he had 10 high-danger scoring chances against on the power play.
I imagine they should have had at least 2 goals last night by the nerdy numbers. And it didn't happen because Jordan Binnington was amazing once again for you last night. There have been teams that have had better defensive cores than what this Blues team has recently by this Blues team. Like in recent franchise history, this is not going to rank highly among the Blues defensemen. But man, they look so much better because of the goalie play that they're getting behind them right now. The other thing that I think the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit for, Alex, is they're managing his games really well right now.
Absolutely.
He's getting enough rest between starts to not be overworked. They have that little rest break of like 2 weeks essentially between the Columbus game and getting back on the ice. And so that allowed him to kind of recuperate. He's got his legs back underneath him. They give him a few games in a row. Then they go to Joel Hofer. Now I would imagine we're going to get closer now that you're back into like the grind of the schedule. Not a 1-for-1, but a 2 for Binner, 1 for Hofer.
Yeah.
2 for Binner, 1 for Hofer. And that's the way that you want to see this go. In recent seasons, there were times, and I know that some pushed back against it, and I'm wrong all the time, but I think I'm right here. I think Jordan Binnington is a 50-game starter. There's nothing wrong with being a 50-game goalie in the NHL right now. There are guys that will start more. Maybe you want to say that they're more valuable. That's totally fine. But if I've got a guy that can start 50 games for me in net, and then he gets into the playoffs and he takes his game to another level, dude, that is the kind of goalie that I want. I've got a backup goalie right now that I can trust. He's doing a really good job. Get him out there. If he wins 50% of his games, we're good. And now we get the opportunity to have Jordan Binnington with fresh legs as we get into the postseason when we really need him to step up. I said going into this stretch, Alex, I thought there was a real chance that the Blues would lose 5 of 7 against Toronto, Edmonton, Nashville, Toronto, the Islanders, and then it continued with Detroit and Winnipeg. Well, you got the 2 wins so far, and now if you're able to find a way to get a win against Detroit, hopefully they do. Find a win maybe against Winnipeg, hopefully they do. You got a real opportunity to come out of here right around 500.
Yeah.
If you told me beforehand, hey, you can find a way to get to 500 in this stretch, I would have taken that and hit the button as quick as I possibly could. That's all you were expecting out of this.
Yeah, I mean, to your point with the scheduling, that has been an emphasis from David Alexander, making sure that they're letting him get his legs, making sure he's in a routine, and making sure that you're not overusing him, because last year you started him 60 games, and he played in 61 and had an .894 save percentage. And if you look at how the schedule is going to play out, I would almost bet my money that Joel Hofer starts Saturday against the Detroit Red Wings, because that's 4 days off for Jordan Binnington, and you put him against the Winnipeg Jets on the road for a massive 2 points in the Central Division. And the issue with goaltenders, sometimes you do have goalies that can be 60, 65 game starters and be fine with it. But last season, Connor Hellebuyck played in 64 games and started in all of those. He got worn down by the end of the season, and you missed the playoffs. Jake Ottinger played 61 games for Dallas last year. He got injured in the playoffs because sometimes you overuse your goaltenders. Winnipeg this season is using a lot of Connor Hellebuyck. Thatcher Demko is being used almost every single game for the Vancouver Canucks. I would much rather go into a playoff opportunity with a goaltender that has played 50 games. I know he can steal a series, but you've got that time down to know that he can ramp it up for the playoffs rather than get fatigue on the other side of it.
How are you guys feeling? Vibe check. How are you guys feeling about the Blues right now? Obviously, you're coming off of a high because last night you win that game 4-0. But, I mean, we heard it from Drew Bannister after the game last night. He said flat out, I didn't feel like we played a great game. I felt like
we gave up 20 shots in the second period and barely got by.
The first period, I think he took, 4 penalties in that period alone. Like, you really kind of, you squeaked away with one because Jordan Binnington was able to buy you time, and you were able to get the hat trick from Pavel Buchnevich. That top line played really well for the most part. Jordan Kyrou, will get to him coming up here in just a little bit. But you find a way, and that's all that matters. You found a way to get a win in that one. How are we feeling about your 30-24-2 St. Louis Blues right now?
At least for me, and I mean, I'll start because I'm the ultimate optimist. I'm assuming people are expecting me to say Stanley Cup. Yeah, no, that my big picture vibe check is I'm very confident my goaltender can steal me a series. I am also confident that my defense can be good enough. Like, I look at that 2021 season where you almost beat Colorado. you've got essentially the same defense, although I'd argue you got a little bit of a better player now with Matthew Kessel and how he's performing. My vibe check for the offense, I'm tempering it because I don't want to get too excited from one game against a New York Islanders team that has been bad defensively recently. But we saw last night what your offense can do. So vibe check, I still believe this is a playoff team. I believe what I said 7 days ago in this spot. I think they should invest in this team in March 8th because of what Jordan Binnington does.
I'm in a very weird spot because I look at this team and I feel kind of good about them. Not to go on like a run, but to your point, maybe steal a series because they've got elite goaltending, not just from Jordan Binnington, but Joel Hofer, who is allowing them to do this 2-in-1 kind of formula that we're talking about. Offensively, I don't feel good about it, but when the top line is clicking like it was last night, they are elite as well. So I kind of feel like, okay, they're finding ways to win. I kind of enjoy that. So, like, I'm looking ahead and I see sunshine, and then I turn around and there's this big storm that's brewing behind me because it's Doug Armstrong that's potentially selling pieces off of this team. Since the Pavel Buchnevich rumors came out yesterday, and where there's smoke, there's fire, it sounds like they're not actively shopping him, but they're listening. And it makes me not be able to have this great feeling about this Blues team. I feel kind of stuck in between. I think they are a potential playoff team that can win a playoff series. But I also feel like there's a chance that they end up selling one of those top-line wingers at the trade deadline. So I don't really know how to feel because I picked up a little bit of good vibrations, but it might just be the floor vibrating underneath me that's about to fall out.
Yeah, because Doug Armstrong is so not afraid to rip the cover out from underneath you and be like, oh, you excited about, T-Bone, you think this team's going to win the Stanley Cup? Now we're trading Pavel Buchnevich.
Like, I'm not even upset about it. Like, I'm not sitting here trying to go, like, he shouldn't be trading Pavel Buchnevich. No, I understand where they're at. And, like, honestly, I think it kind of makes sense to be doing it.
I don't think they will, mostly because of what just happened. I think they know that they've got a goaltender that you just need to get into the playoffs. I think if that takes place, it's the offseason. I truly believe it. Maybe I'm overestimating this. I think the Blues do invest in this roster going into the trade deadline.
I think they'll make a small investment. I think it'll be something that you look at and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's maybe an improvement over Kasperi Kapanen's spot in the lineup. And you bump Kapanen down, something like that. I actually like this team. And it's because of what the expectations are. The expectations are basically non-existent, right? We went into this season, we knew what they were, and I had that take earlier this year, and I remember Jamie kind of ripped into it a little bit, and it was like November, I want to say, and I said, I don't enjoy watching this team. Yeah. Like, I just, there's nothing about them that's appealing to me, and it's not because they're not winning games. At the time, they were doing everything that you could have asked out of them, but they didn't really try, and there was nothing that was emotionally attaching me to them. I feel the opposite now. This team is like, not to get like sentimental about it or something.
Are you gonna cry, man?
It kind of tugs at your heartstrings.
Hey, man, we're gonna get through this.
Like Jordan Binnington post game last night, answering the questions about what it means to him to like be tied now with Cujo and wins for this franchise.
And that, by the way, that was one of his favorite players growing up, was Cujo.
That's a different dude right now. Like, forget what he's doing on the ice. Obviously, I think that's a symptom of the fact of this, but he's acting, sounding, talking like a different human than he was this time last year. Like, think about all of the stuff that was surrounding Jordan Binnington over the last 2 years, and now think about how little there has been surrounding him this season. He just seems kind of at peace. He's like, you know what? This is who I am. I know what I am as a player. I know what I am as a goalie. I'm just going to go out there and play. Mm-hmm. Forget all of the other stuff. I'm just going to go out there and play. So that has been kind of a breath of fresh air with him. And then you look at some of the guys that have started to emerge in your bottom 9 forward group. It's like, okay, I enjoy watching a guy like Oscar Sundqvist. I really like watching Jake Neighbors right now. Robert Thomas emerging the way that he has been really fun to watch. Yeah. This is a young player that was expected to be something. He took his lumps. I said all of last year, I'm not sure that he's going to be able to reach the heights of what we heard from Craig Berube, where he said this is going to be a star. And
you're
now
wrong
he's there.
A lot.
Yeah, I know. I like watching this team.
Yeah,
I really do. I think they're a fun group. Matt Kessel almost having that goal that kind of got tapped in by who was it, Toropchenko last night, and then it gets called off, and the ref's like, "You're not gonna like this," but it's a no-goal. I think they're a fun watch.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they're going to win the cup. That doesn't mean that I really believe in what's happening. I just like the group. I like the mix, and I think there's value in that as a fan of just being able to watch the team regularly and saying, you know what, kind of like these guys. kind of enjoy watching them right now. And over the last couple of years, I haven't been able to say that about the St. Louis
Real
Blues.
quick, you know why it's a fun group? It's because I think a lot of people were expecting this to be another bad year. A lot of people were expecting this to be another top 10 pick. And it looked like it the first month and a half, 2 months of the season. The fact that you're starting to see life from a group instills the faith that you had when Doug Armstrong said this is a retool, not a rebuild.
And can I be honest? Some of that for me and some of the enjoyment from it is from Drew Bannister.
Sure.
Because I think Drew Bannister is saying the truth in his post-game comment. Like last night, if they win that game, he could just say the easy things like, yeah, you know, we played well. We know we came out and we got 2 points. He said we didn't play well.
I love a guy that's got nothing to lose.
And he's been holding guys accountable. He's moved Kyrou down in the lineup when he's not performing well. He benched Buchnevich in one of his first moves as head coach
Kevin
to try
Hayes
and hold
Brandon
accountability.
Sauter on the fourth line.
Exactly. And that's why, like, though I'm finding some enjoyment in this group, a lot of my frustration from the group isn't because of like expectations. It's been on the top line and their inconsistency at times, and that's why I find Bannister so enjoyable because he's been holding those guys accountable. So that's one of those guys for me for why I've enjoyed this team.
And somebody on the text line, and this is a fair point, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Guys, a couple of the last few games, they've looked like a team that doesn't even want to be out there. They've looked completely lack of energy, and now suddenly we're talking about them once again as being a team that can win a playoff series. Guys, this is who they are. Like,
and we're not talking about a team winning a playoff series. We're talking about a goaltender stealing a playoff series.
But one of the reasons why I didn't overreact to the Nashville or the Toronto game is because, like, guys, go look at any team schedule.
Yeah.
Any team. And you can pick literally every single one. They have stretches where it's like, man, I don't really know what happened last night. That was weird. They didn't play well.
Vancouver's lost 3 in a row, guys. Three in a row.
The vast majority of the time under Drew Bannister, they try. And I know that's like a bare bones, basic, and like bare minimum threshold for what you need in order to go out there and like play as a team. But that has not been the case for the St. Louis Blues over the last year and a half or so. They haven't tried. And so for them to just, the majority of the time, I would say the vast majority of the time, under Drew Bannister, to go out there and try, that's enough for me right now at this point in the retool. And we're going to get to a point in a year, 2, maybe 3 years where that's no longer enough, where you now have to not only go out there and try and win, 55, 60% of the points that you're able to accumulate. Now it's going to be about, okay, let's push. Let's go out there and make the move that is the equivalent of Ryan O'Reilly and Bozak in one day. Go out there and make the move that is the equivalent of bringing in a David Perron. Go out and make the move that is the equivalent of adding a Nick Leddy to your... Like, those are the kinds of things that we will be discussing over time. We're just not there right now.
Yeah.
This is a different part of your build. This is a different part of what the St. Louis Blues are. And for right now, what they are is enough. It's not great, but it is enough for this season. What they might be is a redo of the 2017 team. We'll compare the two coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Blues talk more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
All right, we got to talk about a situation that took place last night. Patrick Waugh decides with about 9 minutes left in the game. I'm pulling the goalie. We're down 3-0 at this point. The New York Islanders were. And he makes an aggressive move while it's 4-on-4. They took matching minors, and Patrick Waugh decides, you know what, I'm pulling my goalie. Let's go ahead and see if we can try to get this one back. And it's something that came under a lot of scrutiny. There are two different sides to this. People that are very firmly in the, yeah, what else are you going to do? You got to try to win the game. You're down 3-0. That's an opportunity for you to try to get a goal back, and then you've got enough time left to be down by 2. You can potentially come back in that game. We see it all the time, teams down 3-1 that are able to come back. Down 3-0, that's a pretty significant, substantial deficit. And others that are like, dude, there's 9 or 10 minutes left in the game. What are you doing? How are you pulling your goalie at this point? We're going to get into the comparison, by the way, between this year's Blues and the 2017 Blues here in just a moment, and whether or not it's one that is reasonable. Alex, I want to start with you. When you saw the Islanders pull the goalie with about half the period left in the third period, what'd you think?
Makes sense. First of all, you got a Patrick Waugh head coach who is a very aggressive head coach. And look, you got nothing else to play for right now. Your team is down 3-0. You're on, or you're putting yourself on a power play when you pull the goaltender. All you need to do, Rick Zombo says it best, the 2-goal lead, worst lead in hockey. All you need to do is get one, and you start to make the Blues second-guess themselves. So, a team that at the time had gone 0 for 4 on their power play, but had 8 high-danger scoring chances on those 4 power plays, Patrick Waugh's looking at this saying, my team's got jack squat right now because that goaltender's hot. Let's pull the goalie, and let's try and score a power play goal with the goalie pulled. And if we don't get it, well, then so be it. We'll try and keep pushing, but you've got to get a goal because otherwise even strength had done nothing for you.
Yeah, I thought it was the wrong decision.
Of course you did.
I thought.
Oh, don't hold back.
I thought Patrick.
Not just the wrong decision.
Patrick Waugh showed why he should be coaching the juniors, not coaching in the NHL, because that's a terrible decision in my opinion.
Yeah, the guy that won 2 Memorial Cups.
Yeah, go back and do that. I think when you look at the decision for me, I thought they were the better team at even strength, and I know they hadn't solved Jordan Binnington, but I felt the moment you pulled the goalie there,
it's 3-0, T-Bone.
I know it was 3-0.
You were the better team, though, right?
Islanders were the better team, as Drew Bannister said, by the way.
Not for 32 seconds, am I right? Hey-o!
It only takes 32 seconds, guys. I just made my watch say I'm too loud.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at that situation for me, you're the better team in terms of offensively at even strength so far. I know it was 3-0, but I think they were playing better. I would still run it with that at 4-on-4, by the way, where there is more open ice, and I would just continue with that because the moment you pull the goalie and you allow a goal 10 minutes to go, the game is absolutely over. I didn't feel it was necessarily over for the Islanders. I thought for 10 minutes they could score a goal there in about a 3-minute stretch and be back to the point that you're talking about. I think they could have easily done that at even strength, but you pull the goalie, and all of a sudden you're back to kind of this penalty kill mindset for the Blues, and they score on the empty net, and all of a sudden it's over. It's officially over. Like, that game was done with 10 minutes to go last night. You could have left the stands.
That game was over when the third period opened up.
I didn't think that game was over in the third period. A 3-0 lead with the Blues defense? No, that game's
not just
over.
the Blues defense. It's the Blues goaltender, Jordan Binnington.
I know, but
you've got to have an advantage somewhere.
You score one goal, and you start to build momentum. I think the Islanders are back in that. I think pulling the goalie 10 minutes is too aggressive.
Right. I think anytime you got an opportunity to score a goal, you take a chance at it, especially when your team's. If that was 1-0, yes, you're stupid. 2-0, I'd say you're stupid. But when you're down by 3 or more goals, typically you don't pull the goaltender when you're down by 3 or more goals because you're pretty much out of that game. The only reason you pull the goaltender in that spot is because we're turning it into a power play because it was 4-on-4 as both Saad and the Islanders player went to the penalty box, and you say, we got to do something. And by the way, they hit the post on that 5-on-4 goaltender pulled. That doesn't hit the post and goes in. Islanders got momentum.
Yeah, this is another one of those things where it's about the process versus the result. The result is it didn't work, and so people will judge it accordingly, and they go down 4-0, game's over.
Dan Campbell going for it on the 4th down.
100%. The process, I thought, was smart. If you have an opportunity there to go 5-on-4 with about half the period remaining, I'm giving myself the best opportunity to potentially come back. I'm not playing the game to try to lose by less. I'm trying to play the game to win. And if you're in that spot where you've got an opportunity to get back a goal, this is my best chance. My best chance to do it is right here down by 3, to get back into a 3-1 game, and then boom, the last few minutes, the next 8 minutes or so, I can play 5-on-5 essentially. Try to get that one goal back. And if I get it, now the last 2-3 minutes of the game, I'm pulling my goalie again. Now I'm down by 1, putting the pressure back onto the St. Louis Blues. All of the momentum is now on the Islander side of things. The ice has now been tilted in their direction.
Yep.
It just didn't work. It didn't work. So if the same situation was reversed last night and the Blues end up losing 4-0 because they pull the goalie with 10, 11 minutes to go, whatever, I would be praising Drew Bannister today for the decision that he made, the aggressiveness that he showed, and the fact that he is clearly trying to win the game when there is an opportunity to do so, especially on the road, especially when you're going up against a goalie like Jordan Binnington. So I loved the choice by Patrick Waugh. I get why it's criticized because it is very aggressive. I hope more coaches do stuff like this. I think that is something that should be employed by teams.
And let's be honest, Patrick Waugh is the Dan Campbell of NHL head coaches. Sure. That dude doesn't care what you think of what he does.
Yeah. I thought it was a really smart choice by them, despite how aggressive it was. All right, Alex, I made a comparison earlier today, and I've done this before earlier this season, but it feels even more apt now, between this year's Blues team and the 2017 team that had Ken Hitchcock fired midway through the year. They were right around 500 when he was fired. They decide to promote Mike Yeo from within, and then they go on that crazy run down the stretch. They win 30 of their next 32 games. They only lose 8 times in a regulation in the final 32 games of the regular season. They end up making the postseason, winning in the first round in 5 games against the Minnesota Wild, and then losing in the second round 4-2 against the Nashville Predators. If you look back at that team, man, that offense stunk. They just were not very good. You had Vladimir Tarasenko, who had an unbelievable season. 39 goals, 75 points. You had one other player on the roster that scored at least 20 goals that year. One. It was Patrick Berglund. If you're looking for guys that scored at least 55 points that season, you only had 2 of them. It was Vladimir Tarasenko and Jaden Schwartz, who had 55 points on the season. He was your second leading point producer on the team, was Jaden Schwartz. Man, you were seeing guys like Paul Stastny and Patrick Berglund, Robbie Fabry, Yori Laterra, Scotty Upshaw, Kyle Brodziak. Like, these are guys that were getting serious minutes in your lineup that season. Is that a potential comparison, Alex? Because you look at how they won, it was with defense, which was a much better defensive core than what you have. But it was with Jake Allen, who was an amazing goalie that season. He ended up basically stealing that series against Minnesota for you. Could we see a redo of that with Jordan Binnington in that this time around?
You scored 11 goals in the playoffs in that first round.
It's crazy.
In that round, yeah, you absolutely can. I know Grant talks about that series all the time. It's one that sticks out to his brain the most. You won that Minnesota Wild series because of Jake Allen. He was outstanding that postseason. A 956 save percentage for them against the Minnesota Wild. Like, he stood on his head and then did it backwards against Minnesota. So, yeah, that is probably the best comp, because maybe you've got a little bit better offense than that. I'm not sure, because this team is so inconsistent. It's hard for me to say you got a better offense than what Schwartz, Steen, Tarasenko, David Perron, Paul Stastny, and Yori Laterra were. But they didn't score a lot of goals then. You don't have the similar defense. I mean, you don't have anything that gets close to Alex Pietrangelo and Jay Bouwmeester, but you do got the goaltending. And I think Binnington is better than what Jake Allen was in that playoff. So, yeah, I think if you want to look at a comp, and by the way, that 2017 season was just the start of Doug Armstrong saying, like, we're entering a window to start winning. I don't know if you're on the same trajectory as that, but look what they did 2 years later.
Yeah, the next year you end up kind of middling, but a pretty solid team.
And you missed the playoffs by 1 point.
You're right there. And then the following season, we all know what happened. It was a special year, and that was the offseason in which they decided to really push. It feels like the timeline might be similar.
But go beyond that season, you won the Cup too. Yes, special year, but after that, you were the best team in the Western Conference leading up to the COVID shutdown. And then the following year, the half season, was the year that you nearly beat Colorado in the playoffs. So you had that window. Yep. I don't know if the window's the same here, because you are bringing up younger players.
I do think it's similar, though, because you look at it like David Perron was 28, Vladimir Tarasenko 25, Jaden Schwartz 24 on that team, Colton Parayko 23, Robbie Fabry, who didn't end up being a significant piece of it because of the injuries.
Could be like a Zachary Bolduc, though.
21 years old at that point.
point in time. Like you had a lot of really young players that were starting to become more mature players at the NHL. Ivan Barbashev, 21 years old, gets his first cup of coffee.
The hard part is you didn't have 21-year-olds that were joining the NHL, and that's what you're going to have with Snuggerud and Bolduc next season. But if you make the playoffs, and even if you steal a series, I'm going to assume that Bolduc and Snuggerud are at least a part of that group, which is experience to try and build off of that moving forward.
I don't know, man. Sonny was on the team the next year. Sammy Blais was on the team the next year.
And you got Shen the next year, too.
You had Ivan Barbashev on the team the next year. Vince Dunn on the team the next year. All of these guys were 23 or younger. Like those.
The real question is,
really young players.
Does Doug look at this group, and if they have success, does he look at it and say, next year, let's start investing in this a little bit, like they did for Braden Shen and Oscar Sundquist, like they did the following year for O'Reilly, Bozak, and Perron?
He's Alex Ferrario. That is Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Grant France is back in the studio for us. We are broadcasting live today out at the Centene Community Ice Center at the ENB Granite Studio. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to Ask Us Anything. You guys can get your questions in, sports or otherwise, on the Air Comfort Service text line at 314-399-9646. The YouTube chat is off and running over in the graveyard, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. That is the place where you can go to watch us or to get involved in that chat as well. Coming up next, people around Major League Baseball seem to feel the pressure that is mounting on the Cardinals. And there's a new candidate that might be in the mix to be the next Cardinals manager if things go in that direction. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues welcomed in the New York Islanders. They picked up their 30th win of the season in a 4-0 shutout win over the Isles. It was the fastest 3 goals in Blues history, as they scored 3 goals in 32 seconds last night. They have 62 points now on the season, tied with the Nashville Predators, who also won last night. Blues have 1 game in hand on them, and they still sit in that final wild card spot in the Western Conference. They'll look to improve on their record tomorrow as they are in Detroit to take on the Red Wings. It'll be an early one, a 10 o'clock pregame, 11 o'clock puck drop here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. And then over the weekend, you'll be able to hear some college basketball as well here on 101 ESPN. Kansas and Texas tomorrow following the Blues game. That tip-off at 5 o'clock. And then Michigan and Purdue on Sunday. That tip-off at 1 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Jason Stark is one of the best baseball writers in America, and earlier today he wrote a piece on which Major League Baseball teams, front offices, and managers are feeling the most pressure heading into the 2024 season. He had a panel of 31 executives, former executives, coaches, and scouts across Major League Baseball. They voted Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, and the Yankees as the team facing the most pressure heading into 2024. But at number 2 on this list was your St. Louis Cardinals with Ollie Marmol. Quote, "The good news for the Cardinals is that our voters had mostly good things to say about an offseason in which they added Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, and Kyle Gibson to their rotation. The bad news, though, their entire rotation could be 33 years or older, and we've heard lots of concerns about their manager, Ollie Marmol, and his ability to navigate through a storm." Quote, "They'd be at the top of my list of teams to make a change of their manager," said a rival National League executive. Quote, "I just say this. Don't sleep on the job that Yadier Molina did managing Puerto Rico in the Caribbean Series," end quote.
Can we just, stop this whole, dog and pony show and be like, Ollie, look, it was a great run. Why don't you take a step down and we'll just have Yachty start the season off?
So everybody, whether it's nationally, locally, anywhere in between, agrees. The Cardinals are facing a whole hell of a lot of pressure this year, guys. Ollie Marmol, John Mozeliak, it sure seems like they might be tight at the hip. Like those guys, Ollie is the person that John Mozeliak has at this point tied his career to. He's saying, that's my guy. I believe in him as a manager. I think he's the guy to see us through this. And we'll see. We'll see if it ends up working out. But when you have somebody like Yadier Molina that is available and is clearly trying to become a major league manager and is doing everything possible to put him in a position that by the end of this season he will be viewed as a candidate for major league managing jobs, yeah, that's going to be the backdrop to this season. And he's not the only one, Alex. According to Alden Gonzalez of ESPN, quote, "Albert Pujols is going to manage in the Dominican Winter League this year beginning in September. His goal is to eventually manage in the big leagues. This is one step toward that." Derek Gould added some context in saying, "Friends close to Pujols have described over the past year how intrigued he would be about a return to the majors to lead a team as a manager."
So basically what happened was John Mozeliak told both Yachty and Albert, hey, I need both of you guys to go manage.
Go practice.
And whoever has the best record at the end of your season will get the Cardinals job.
So
fight with a pool stick, last man standing wins.
I'm just going to go ahead and give this opinion on the air. I don't think we've really given it yet. I'm not sure Yadier Molina is the same candidate to be a manager that people think. And the reason why is not because I think he'll be bad at any of the in-game decisions. I think he'll be great at that stuff. I think Yadier Molina's best role in the big leagues might be as a bench coach. And the reason why is because of what Ollie Marmol told us is the biggest difference between being a bench coach and being the manager. It's the commitment and time and energy towards the media Guys, Yadi does not want to talk with the media every day. That is not something that he's ever wanted to do in his major league career, and it is something that the manager has to do. I think people would be shocked at how much of a manager's day is spent just talking to the media, explaining decisions, just the most simple of things of what is the latest on player X, Y, and Z when it comes to injury updates, or tell me about what you're doing with this player, or explain this to me. And for a guy like Yadier Molina who does not enjoy that in the first place, I don't think that's going to be something that he looks forward to by any stretch of the imagination. I think it might be different with Albert. This is the one that actually piques my interest, Alex.
Someone dangles Albert in front of BK, and it's game over.
Dude.
Jeff Albert.
You ain't lying. Boy, you want to talk about some hard hit rates.
Hold on, we're being too mean.
I think Albert Pujols might be amazing as a manager in Major League Baseball. Now, it requires him to want to do it, which it sounds like he apparently does. But we saw in his final year here in St. Louis, that was a different version of Albert Pujols than the Albert that was here earlier in his career. Earlier in his career, he didn't have a whole lot of time for the media. He wasn't interested in that. At the end, yeah, he'd talk to you. He'd give you whatever information that you're looking for. He would take a young player off to the side and try to mentor them. Like, I think Albert might be a great Major League Baseball manager. Again, if he is fully committed towards doing that. I view these as very different types of candidates. If Albert really is one of those guys that's out there and available this offseason, and the Cardinal season doesn't go the way that they're hoping, boy, that would be something that is very compelling to me.
And I know a lot of people are bringing it up that you bring both Albert and Yadi on. The thing is, Yadi's going to want to be a manager too, and you're not going to get one of them wanting to be a bench coach and a manager because why? Everybody's got an ego, and everybody wants to be the guy. I understand the part on the media side to where a large portion of that job is you got to do the media, and he does not like that. And I agree that that's part of it. But there are a lot of coaches in professional sports that hate media coverage, find ways to do it, and then get the coaching job done. The one that comes to mind immediately is John Tortorella. The man hates media, but he does it. And then, of course, you go back to the coaching side. So I think it's an area that Yadi at least says now, like, yeah, I can handle that, gets frustrated with it, and probably takes a step back after he gets a taste of it. But if Albert's available as a manager, and look, let's also remember the Cardinals have a stretch of hiring guys that have zero experience in managing major leagues, going all the way back to Mike Matheny. Matheny, Schilt, Marmol, and it has had zero success for this Cardinals team, minus, one World Series appearance with Mike Matheny? So you're doing the same thing again. And I think a lot of people are enamored by the Albert Pujols and the Yadier Molina side of it. But if you had to put both in front of me and said, who do you think has more success with this Cardinals team? I think I would lean more towards Albert Pujols because of those people skills that Pujols possesses and because he seems to, at least from our perspective, which is the media side that BK just talked about, has the ability to explain the game in a different light that I'm not sure Yadi has that. And I don't know because I've never been able to converse with Yadi about baseball like I have with Albert.
I think both.
There was a reason for that, though.
I think both would be great at it, though. I know
agree.
the whole media thing with Yadi. And look, as a media member, would it probably be fun walking into Yadier Molina's office when he doesn't really want to talk to you? No, but it's a part of the job. And like what Alex said, some coaches hate dealing with the media. Man, I'm watching that dynasty thing with the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick hates the media, guys. Yeah. Bill Belichick is still a great head coach. So I think Yadi would still be excellent at it. Even as a media member, I don't really care how he's going to deal with the media. As long as he's speaking with them every day, that's the only caveat that I have.
You might not, but it matters. It matters in a huge way, and I think people always undersell how much of a portion of the job that is. It was part of what led to Mike Matheny, not just here, but in Kansas City as well, the deterioration of his relationship, not just with the media, but the relationship with the fans. Because part of your relationship with the fans is explaining things through the media. Those post-game press conferences, that was part of what became Tony Television. Like, Tony TV after the games, that's part of what led him to becoming so embraced by fans. Yes, obviously the winning is the prerequisite, but
he also had his back and forth with the media a lot.
Yeah, of course, but that's part of the job. But Tony was a great explainer of the game, a great teacher of the game. And he was more than happy to take you through something. Like, what people, I think, undersell about what Tony La Russa did was, man, he was great with the media. Yadi hates talking to the media. There's a difference between those two things. Despising talking to the media and not enjoying the fact that people are questioning your decisions post-game are two very different things. I don't think Yadi's going to enjoy the idea of people questioning his
Oh, yeah. No,
decisions.
the first person that somebody questions his decision in game, they're not going to...
But that's most managers in Major League Baseball. That's most people in life. If you do something and people question what you're doing, people get sensitive about that. And I get it. Like, that's all of us in life. This is a little different. I do think that is a really big part of the job, and I think it is something where there will be questions about that. And that will be my biggest outstanding question about, is Yadi going to be able to handle that as a manager in Major League Baseball? And if your answer is, I don't know, I don't think here in St. Louis that can be somebody that you hire for that job. You've got to know how that's going to go.
I'm more concerned about how he handles the clubhouse and his in-game decision-making, and I think he'd be great at that. And then how he deals with the media, honestly, not a big issue for me. And I'm saying that as a media guy right now. I don't have a big concern about it. Yadi has appeared to do very well in his first 2 stops as a manager, and there's no media involved. I get that basically where he was. I'm not concerned. I think both him and Albert would do a fantastic job because I think they will connect with the players. Though Yadi had his issues with the media, if you will, the guys in the clubhouse liked Yadier Molina. Yadier Molina was a leader in the clubhouse. And what do we talk about with St. Louis Cardinals? We love to rave about it this offseason. Leadership. And I think Yadi would be great at it.
Man, when we had that last year here in St. Louis, I'll tell you who the leader of that team was, and it was Albert Pujols. Everybody gravitated to Albert.
Can Yadi leave from Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Can you lead from out there?
If Yadi wants to be a manager, I will be very curious to see how it goes. But let's say this. If they had these 2 candidates available either mid-season or in the offseason, and things don't go the way that we hope, Ollie is no longer the manager of the Cardinals. And you've got Yadier Molina and Albert Pujols, and those are the 2 candidates to become the next manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. What would you choose? Just based on what we know.
Right now, I'd take Yadi.
I'd take Albert.
I'd take Albert as well. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line.
You also got to consider who would you take knowing you're going to have to fire in probably 3 to 5 years.
I mean,
Cardinals, take Albert.
Cardinals Hall of Famer, or Hall of Famer, Cardinals legend?
Neither one would be easy.
No, to say
but which one would be easier?
Ask us anything coming up next on 101 ESPN.
You've got questions. We may have the answers. Maybe it's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
Driven by Offenburg Kia in the St. Clair Auto Mall in Shiloh off I-64.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, get them in on the Air Comfort Service text line now. You can always watch us on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Guys, let's start out with this from the 314. What's the next step in each of your respective careers? Would you like to go to a different time zone, move to TV, etc.? What would you like for your next step to be? Alex?
Well, I'm not moving to another time zone, not with 3 kids. I'm staying here and I ain't going anywhere. I don't know. I really enjoy radio. But I guess if I were to like say what would be the next desirable step, it would be television, pre and post for Blues Cardinals, or even play-by-play if it opened up. But it's one of those things that it's so different because, like, I thought I wanted to get into television when I was out of college, but then when I realized how much work you did and then you were only able to talk for 2 to 3 minutes, that's why I loved radio so much more. So that would probably be the next step for me. Otherwise, it's just radio.
This is it for me. This is what I want to do. Like, it's all I've ever wanted to do. It's all I ever want to do. I want to be on local radio. My wife is from St. Louis. I have made this my home. We have bought a house here. We had a kid here. This is it, man. This is all I want to do, is do sports radio on the air for you guys. So love it or hate it, hopefully, God willing. I just signed a new contract, so I'm hopefully going to be around for a little while longer at a minimum. But this is it, man. I mean, at some point, we know how this works. Like, you're working to get towards one of the morning or afternoon drive slots. That's what everybody wants, because that's where the money is. That's where the listeners are for the most part. Those are the most listened to spots on the station. So I would love to spend however long 101 ESPN is here, the rest of my career at 101 ESPN in one of those 2 slots. So that's it for me, man.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same for me, to where it's probably just be here. I mean, I don't know what the future fully holds, but, you know, I'm doing what I enjoy, so I'm taking it just day by day. I haven't even really thought about, like, what I'm doing on Monday of next week. So looking at the future, I really don't know.
All right, from the 314, guys, if the Cardinals are terrible at the All-Star break, do you think that Ollie Marmol would be fired?
I don't even know if it's the All-Star break.
That's what I was going to say.
You go 2 months of them being bad, he's gone.
They start off like they did last year, which was what, like 9.
When was Joe Girardi fired?
He was June or mid-June.
It was like right at the beginning of the summertime.
Yeah, June 3rd. That feels about right.
Yeah.
If you go through,
I think Memorial Day this year is kind of when normally it's Flag Day for Claves. I think Memorial Day this year, you're going to have a pretty good idea.
If you go through the first 2 months of the season and you're if you're 500 or below, he's gone.
I think so too.
I think it would be the end of the first month.
Who do you think they would hire? Do you think that they would immediately put Descalso in, or do you think they would hire Yachty? I think they'd hire Yachty.
I think they'd hire Yachty or Albert.
Yeah, I think they'd go Yachty just because he's done it already. I mean, Albert's not going to start until September. I don't think they would do that and throw him in, but I could see where they could throw Yachty in. And, like, you've got Descalso that played with Yachty, so, like, there'd be a little bit of chemistry there still. So I think that's what they do. I'm willing to say it'd be the first month where they make that decision. They start, or they last year, 9-17 or something like that in the first month. They start that way, guys, on a schedule that I know everybody's crying that is super tough. I don't think it's all that tough, and I think if they start that way, I can just tell you now, I'll be declaring the season dead from the first month.
I think that's more than reasonable. All right, from the 618, Alex, why do you think it is that everybody in Toronto seems to believe that the Maple Leafs are trading for Colton Parayko?
I don't know, but everybody, I heard on another podcast yesterday, they were like, it's pretty obvious that the Blues are going to probably dangle Colton Parayko to Toronto or Boston. I'm like, what? No. Yeah, they want Colton Parayko. Everybody wants Parayko now because last year he wasn't a good defenseman, and now he's a great defenseman making $6.5 million. That's why, because Toronto needs desperate help on defense, and guess what? Parayko's freaking awesome. So, sure, you can have Colton Parayko if you send me Austin Matthews.
From the 618, guys, what do you think of the Royals' new stadium plans? And if they fall through, could you see them relocating? I do find it really interesting. I wonder if this is a push from Rob Manfred as like the final thing that he wants to be known for in Major League Baseball. It's not just the Royals, but it sounds like the Diamondbacks are now pushing for a new stadium. The White Sox are pushing for a new stadium. There's like 5 to 7 teams across Major League Baseball, which is basically a quarter of the league, that is pushing for either a relocation or a new stadium in their current home market. The Royals are just one of those. To answer the question on what do I think of their new plans, most of my stuff is more Kansas City centric, so I'm not going to bore you with the minutia of it. I like that they're moving downtown. I'm not sure that I love the actual area in which they are moving because of the district that they're in. It'd be like here moving to like Midtown. There's a lot of culture and there's a lot of stuff in the Crossroads district, which is where they're potentially moving, and it's going to displace a lot of that. That makes me a little nervous, and as a native Kansas City, kind of gross. But it's going to happen. I think they're going to move there, and when they do, people are going to love it. It's going to be really cool. Downtown baseball's the best, man. That's what we have here. And I will say, one of the things that I do think that the DeWitts deserve a lot of credit for is that they didn't ask for the same kind of public financing with this Busch Stadium as what these other teams are currently asking for from their home markets. So I don't think the Royals are going to move. I think they're going to get this pushed through, and they'll end up moving downtown. All right, from the 314, final thing here. Guys, Randy said that you're the top-rated show. Congratulations, and how are ratings determined? I don't think we're actually technically allowed to discuss how it's determined on the radio.
You do that then.
All right, coming up next.
Coming up next, Cardinals.
I'll say this. The ratings can be they can fluctuate quite a lot.
He never celebrates the good. You know?
One day they can be, we're third or fourth in our time slot, and then 3 months later, we're first, baby.
You know, you just told people that your goal is morning or afternoon drive, 100%. And this is it, right?
But.
Your sales pitch sucks.
Very
Hold on a second.
You don't get to but.
Yeah, there's no but.
When you're first in your time slot, in your target demographic.
Oh, watch out, you're backing up.
You have to celebrate it, man. And so, yeah, it's really cool. For the month of January, we just got the book out. We were first place in our time slot. The Fast Lane was also just absolutely crushing it in the afternoons. They're not only first in their time slot, but first on the station. So huge kudos to them as well. It means a lot that you guys listen to us during your lunch break, because if you didn't, we wouldn't be here any longer. So shout out to all of you. You're the ones that actually make this possible.
I won't but it. We're incredible, and you're incredible for listening to us.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're diving into some NFL quick hitters. But next, Jordan Kyrou might be the key to unlocking the top line. We'll explain why coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Blues talk more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Blues have a 1-0 lead. 2-0. They score. They come right in off the next draw and find Pavel Buchnevich in the middle. 2-0 St. Louis. The Islanders bring it up and dump it into the St. Louis zone. Defended well by Parayko, cleared by Leddy. Thomas with a head of steam gets it over the line. It's the trailer. Kyrou to the far wing. They score! Buchnevich, 2 in a hurry. And the St. Louis Blues have made it 3-0 with 14:50 to go here in period number 2. Now the puck to the near wing. Buchnevich, the backhand for the hat trick. He's got it. That's 3 in the game for Pavel Buchnevich. And if you've got a hat, chuck it in your radio as the St. Louis Blues get the hat trick from Pavel Buchnevich.
I thought he played really well tonight. I thought it was a good bounce back game for him. You know, there was some good plays made to him, but he was able to finish on those opportunities. So it's a good game for him, and you know, he got rewarded.
That's what it sounded like right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN last night, as Pavel Buchnevich finishes that one with a hat trick. You have Robert Thomas with 3 points, and the Blues get a 4-0 home victory as they get ready for a significant road trip coming up. They are now 30-24-2 on the season. Alex, as much as Buchnevich and Thomas were the ones that were credited with the points, it was Jordan Kyrou that was credited post-game from his line mates as the driver of the offense for the St. Louis Blues last night. And I find this interesting because as you think about what Pavel Buchnevich has done, we've talked about it, you know, a little underwhelming at times this season relative to expectations. You look at what Robert Thomas has been. Oh, my God, a legitimate number 1 centerman. But as we looked at the list of the top 10 centers in the NHL yesterday, we were thinking to ourselves, man, all of these guys for the most part have like not just a guy on their line, a dude, a legitimate top 10 winger, top 20 winger in the NHL that's paired with them, and that's maybe what Robert Thomas is missing right now. The goal for the Blues is for Jordan Kyrou to play every night the way that he did last night. He was checking. He was skating. He was probably, despite the lack of points compared to Buch and Thomas, the best skater on the ice from start to finish in that game last night. Alex, how do they get that out of him more often?
That's the key to unlocking this team entering a winning window, is to get Jordan Kyrou to this level consistently. As much as the talk was Pavel Buchnevich, because, of course, the narrative right now is he's in the trade conversations and what do the Blues do, the narrative for me is how do they get a top line that consistently shows up every night? And watching them play last night, look, I think Pavel Buchnevich is exactly the type of player every single night that you saw last night. He's going to get his scoring chances. He's going to finish most of the time. But what Pavel Buchnevich is he's not a driver of the offense. Sure, you expect your centerman to do that. That's Robert Thomas. But Buch is kind of that third piece when you get 2 players that are going. A great example of this is going back to that 2019 Cup run. It didn't matter who you put on the line with O'Reilly and Perron. That third person was going to have success because O'Reilly and Perron were driving the play. You don't have that second one. Last night, Kyrou was it. The goals that were scored by Buch before the empty netter, first you win the faceoff. Kyrou wins the puck back off of that faceoff, gets it to Thomas, and Thomas finds the open man. But the second one, and that's the one that Thomas talked about last night with Curbs and Joey, that was a highly skilled play. He said it was a C cut where he goes into the zone, he makes a C on the ice to get the defender off of him, and finds Pavel Buchnevich. The issue for this Blues team is how do you get that almost every night? Because, look, you can't be perfect every single night. It's not going to happen. You're going to disappear. But I looked at this during the commercial break. This season where Jordan Kyrou or Pavel Buchnevich have had 2 or more points in a game, the Blues are undefeated. but it's only happened 11 times for Jordan Kyrou and 12 times for Pavel Buchnevich, which tells me out of, what have you played, 56 games now this season? Almost a fifth of your games is when those guys go out. You've got to turn that into almost 50% of your games. Those guys show up like that, because when you do that, then all of the other guys you're bringing up are complementary pieces, but you enter your winning window because you've got a line that's playing like a top line. And to me, Buch can be it. If he has the second piece to that line, that's where Jordan Kyrou comes into play for me.
And I 100% agree that he's the key to unlocking this offense. But because of what you just said there and the amount of time that he's been here now in St. Louis, I just don't think you're ever going to get it out of him consistently. And that's not a shot against Jordan Kyrou. Like, if I told you that you could have a 30-goal scorer, I think I would sign up for that. And I think if you're going to go with the mindset of, okay, Kyrou is still, we want to keep that because it's a lot harder to replace a 30-goal scorer than it is to replace what you're talking about in Pavel Buchnevich. You almost have to find somebody that's going to bump Kyrou down to the second line, in my opinion. Yep. Because you got to find somebody that is more consistent, that is driving the offense consistently, and not that 1 out of every 5 games that it is kind of they've got their A game that night. Because that's something that you just don't teach. You know, you can teach puck handling. You can teach, you can work on a guy like Robert Thomas, work on him to shoot the puck. But the mindset of just going out there and like competing at 100%, that's a player thing. That's not okay, we can teach him okay, here's how we get ready to go. No. That's a player-driven mindset thing. And if he doesn't have it already at this point in the NHL, I just don't think Kyrou's going to get it. But I think you can still have him on your team. He just can't be on that top line with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich.
But the hard part is you're paying Pavel Buchnevich the $8 million too, and that's 3 guys. I can't pay 3 guys and only have 2 of them in my top line.
You can't pay Pavel Buchnevich.
Right.
Yep.
But to what you just said, T-Bone, Patrick Waugh said this yesterday when he was talking about Zachary Bolduc, and I thought it was a perfect answer to really the NHL. He was talking about Bolduc's defensive play and how, you got to get physical. You have to win puck battles if you want to be effective offensively. And he said, you don't flip a switch defensively. You either know how to do it or you don't know how to do it. He said, you can't teach that. It's in the player. And he was talking about young players that come from juniors to get to the NHL. But last night was the perfect example of it. You know that that's in there. I think that's why so many people get frustrated with Jordan Kyrou. That play last night, that's a guy that's worth $8 million a year because he changed the game in a matter of 32 seconds. But you don't just flip the switch on and off. You have to have it every single night, and you can't teach that. It's got to be in the player.
And this is where I'm at as well, is I think one of the things that I have underestimated probably in terms of my evaluation of players over the years is just, whether you want to call it compete or try or give a bleep, like that's the stuff that when you see it in a player, and I think it's what's made Jake Neighbors a really good player. Mm-hmm. That's the stuff that allows you to unlock the ceiling. The skill, all of that, that's actually the floor. Like, you need that to get to the NHL level. You've got to be a certain level of fast. You've got to have a certain caliber of shot. You've got to have the ability to put the puck where it needs to be, and you've got to be able to defend at least to a certain degree. All of that is required to get to the NHL level. And then it becomes about, man, how badly do you want it? And that is where you get into the intangibles. And it's why people get mad at the nerdy numbers guys like myself, because how are you going to be able to, how can you possibly put that on a spreadsheet? You can't. It's impossible to do. There is nothing that we can just quantify that says this guy has this skill which translates to this number. It doesn't exist. And so if you just look at the numbers, like you look at the Pavel Buchnevich numbers since he's arrived in St. Louis, he's played in 190 games. He's playing an average of 19 minutes per night. He's at a point per game pace. He's a plus 54 on the ice in that stretch. That is 14th among forwards in plus minus over that stretch of games. Pretty freaking good. And he's 34th in the NHL in points per game in that stretch. Again, pretty darn good. But when you look at what you're getting from that line with Jordan Kyrou, it's not consistent enough. There are nights where you're going to go out there and, my God, they could be one of the best lines in the NHL. There might even be a 10-game stretch, Alex, where we've seen this in the past. They go out there and they dominate. Even against some of the best teams in the league, we see it. But then you'll see it. It's coming. It's right on the horizon. You don't know when. You don't know how bad it's going to be. But there's going to be a 3, 4, 5-game stretch, or it's just floating. The compete isn't there. The giving a you-know-what isn't there any longer. And I totally agree with you guys. I don't think that is an ability that is learned. I think that's innate within somebody. You either have it or you don't. And I think at this point, because Kyrou does not appear to have that, I think the ceiling for him is a second-line player. And that's still a good player. And it might even be worth $8 million in today's NHL, honestly, given where the cap's at. But it's not a guy that I can consider as a top-line player, and it's not a guy that I think moving forward you can pay Pavel Buchnevich and Jordan Kyrou because you got to pay somebody else to become that guy that's a number one winger.
The tough part with what you just said is if you're doing that and he is the ceiling of a second-line player for you, you got to hope that one of Snuggerud, Dvorsky, Bolduc, or Jake Neighbors becomes a top-line forward for you within the next 3 years, and that's a lot of pressure to put on a young guy because you have to have a low-level salary cap capitalize on a top-line role because you've paid somebody to be the top-line player, and he's not that top-line player.
Last thing that I wanted to get to here, I want to give some credit to Robert Thomas. Not for the way that he played last night, but for what he did after the game. It was one of those things that the really good leaders in a room will do, but sometimes you talk to a guy without actually speaking to him. Robert Thomas talked to the media last night after the game and was asked about their line, the performance that they had, and it'd be easy for him to go out there and say, you know, Pavel Buchnevich had a hat trick. He was amazing last night. That's not what he said. Give this a listen.
Kyrou carried our line tonight, the way he played, and, battling, winning puck battles, using his speed, his agility. So he created most of the chances for us tonight.
Did you hear what he said?
Yeah.
Puck battles, the way he used his speed, he carried our line tonight.
Yeah.
He's talking to Jordan Kyrou without actually talking to Jordan Kyrou. That's what that was.
Said the same thing postgame with Curbs and Joey, too. They asked him about Kyrou's performance. I think Joe did. And Robert Thomas kind of chuckled, and he said, yeah, he was great tonight. He goes, hard work pays off. And he said he did everything on the ice on those goals that were scored.
Yep.
That's what you want. I mean,
that's all you can do, by the way, if you're Robert Thomas, is just you say the right things, you do the right things, and hopefully your guy gets it. And if it clicks, it clicks. I don't think it's going to at this point. I think at this point we've kind of oversold how young and how inexperienced Kyrou is. He's at this point he is what he is. But I like the way that Thomas is handling it. I don't think you can handle that any better.
You've gone through two coaches now with Jordan Kyrou. You've gone through two captains with Jordan Kyrou, and you've gotten still the inconsistency. The only other person and the only other thing as a team you can try is to have that pure pump up that Robert Thomas just showed there. That is the leadership. That's the type of player that if you're Jordan Kyrou, you hear him say that and you're like, damn, all right, let's keep going with this then. Like if you're him, you saw the impact of what you had in that game. Pavel Buchnevich just scored a hat trick, and they're talking about your performance. And it wasn't just him. Binnington talked about it. Buchnevich talked about it. Bannister talked about it. That's how you get through to a Jordan Kyrou, and that's how you hope a season like this goes to a season like what Robert Thomas is having this year.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone on BK. We've got Grant Francis back in the studio doing a great job for us today. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You guys can always watch us as well on YouTube at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. Coming up next, NFL Quick Hitters here on 101 ESPN.
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
All right, it's time for some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN. The big news in the NFL today, boys, is salary cap talk. Ooh, you know this gets me going.
Does it?
It's time for some nerdy number discussion. So the salary cap last year was set at $224 million. The salary cap for the upcoming season will be
$110 million. They're lowering it. They're cutting everybody in half.
Want to make more money?
$155 million.
Unbelievable.
The salary cap is going up $31 million year over year. Guys, this is a huge deal for some teams
This is
that are
just
going
the Kansas City tax.
strapped going into this offseason, including...
This is the Patrick Mahomes deal. Patrick Mahomes needs a weapon, and he doesn't have enough money, so we don't want him to cut his cost. Let's give him more salary cap space. It's unreal what the Chiefs do to the league.
Yeah, the Chiefs are going to have about $60 million to play with this offseason.
They're going to freaking sign Mike Evans and Chris Jones, and I'm going to hate this team so much.
Sneed and Chris Jones will be back, and they'll go out and sign, Mike Evans this offseason.
I
That'll be
hate
great.
this is the Kansas City Chiefs rule, and frankly, they should be kicked out of the league for it.
No, the other teams that will benefit significantly because of this are the teams that want to extend their quarterbacks. Like, if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for example, you didn't have a ton of cap space going into the offseason. Now you've got a little more room to work with going into the offseason to try to get that deal done with Baker Mayfield. If you're the Minnesota Vikings, you got a little more room to be able to make things work with somebody like a Kirk Cousins. Guys, what do you think this means for this year's free agency class? Do you think that there are going to be guys that get way bigger deals than what we were previously expecting because of the new influx of cash?
I think this is the worst thing to be heard from for like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that have to pay Baker Mayfield now like $50 million a year because now the cap's going up. I think you're going to see a lot. I don't think it comes down to it with wide receivers because sometimes I think you got to pay those guys. But I think you're going to see overpaid quarterbacks and you're going to see at some point an overpaid running back. Derrick Henry is going to make bank because of the salary cap going up.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some guys get overpaid. I think Chris Jones could end up being one of those if he does end up testing the market. You're definitely going to see it because I remember when the NBA salary cap skyrocketed that first time and I saw contracts that got handed out, I went, whoa, that guy's not worth $40 million a year.
Who, the ninth player off of the bench for the Dallas Mavericks?
I think Conley was the first ever. Was Mike Conley the first one that ever got? I think it was like a $100 million contract. And I remember looking at it going, man, I like Mike Conley, but he's not worth that money.
Remember the offseason that the NBA salary cap spiked, and it was a big man that went to the Lakers, I want to say, that ended up getting just this massive contract. Maybe, but that was one. There have been some terrible contracts that have been given out in the NBA. I think you could see something similar this offseason in the NFL. I don't know who specifically it's going to be, but like Hollywood Brown is a free agent wide receiver this offseason. Somebody's going to get Mike Evans. They're going to give him a boatload of money. We know that.
Hollywood Brown's going to get a lot of money, and it's going to be just unnecessary.
Yeah, so somebody like that.
Calvin Ridley is going to get paid.
Exactly. Those are the kinds of guys that benefit the most, in my opinion, from something like this. We know that the top guys, they always get paid. Every offseason, that's going to be the case. They're going to get more than what you're probably right now thinking that they'll get. So, who this helps the most is the second tier of free agent that otherwise might have been a little squeezed. Now maybe they get even more.
Someone brought up a good point. Does this change if you're the mindset of the Chicago Bears? Like, do you now that you have more salary cap space?
They have so much money. They have like $100 million to spend.
Do you keep Justin Fields, draft Marvin Harrison, and then try and build the rest of your team?
No, because you can already do that. You can do that either way. Justin Fields isn't taking up very much money.
Yeah.
If you had like a $40 million quarterback and that was the conversation that you're having, maybe. But
Tampa Bay.
I feel like at this point, everybody's come to the same conclusion. You have to take Caleb Williams and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
And if it works, great. And if not, at least you tried. You know, and you deserve a little bit of credit for at least trying. You gave yourself the best opportunity to have a big-time quarterback. Speaking of Caleb Williams, earlier today over on ESPN.com, T-Bone, you brought this up to us. Matt Miller put together his list of the 16 prospects that he believes have legitimate first-round grades this year. He had Caleb Williams as one of those players. and he put together his NFL comparison for all of these different players. I want to talk to you guys about if this player becomes what he says is the player comparison, where are you taking him, right? He had Caleb Williams compared to Aaron Rodgers. You got to take that guy number 1.
Hope that's more on-field than off-field Aaron Rodgers, but sure.
It might be a little bit of both, honestly.
Oh, God.
I mean, you see him chilling on the sidelines at USC games. I mean, yeah,
Wouldn't
you have
you,
to take that number 1 overall. Because what's Justin Fields been played to yet? You know, like, I don't remember what his comp was coming out of college. I don't think he's gotten there.
Yeah, but if you're going through those two comps, you have to take that over Lamar Jackson?
What do you mean?
Because doesn't one of the other players on there?
We're getting to that.
Oh, sorry. Sold the farm.
Jaden Daniels is the next one up. His player comparison,
Is it Lamar?
Jackson.
Would have never seen that
The
coming.
next one, Drake May, the quarterback out of North Carolina. His player comparison, Justin Herbert. If you've got those 3 guys, I think all 3 comparisons are semi-reasonable. Now, these are the upside plays, right? If they are everything we think they are, they would play like blank. And the answer is Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, and Justin Herbert. If those are your 3 options, how would you rank those 3 guys in the NFL?
I think I would go Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Drake May.
Interesting.
I mean, I can't deny 2 MVPs, and I know I've been the one that says Lamar Jackson can't get it done in the playoffs, but maybe Jaden Daniels is a different specimen when it comes to the playoffs, like we've seen with C.J. Stroud.
Dude, I find him so interesting this year. I think he's the most interesting player in this year's draft because I
hope
don't
Atlanta
know what it's going
trades
to look
up.
like in the NFL. I don't know. I think it could be special, like genuinely special, and I'm taking him in the top 5. But there is the downside that because he doesn't have the same caliber of players around him, the same weapons like he had in college. He had 2 NFL first-round receivers in college, and now that's not going to be the case when he gets to the league. So
Go to the Atlanta Falcons. If they trade for you, you're in a better position than you would be if you go to New England or
New England's my fear.
Who's the other one?
Please don't go there.
Washington.
Washington. Yeah, God, don't do Washington either.
Of those 3, I would still rank, I think, Williams 1. I would probably go then Daniels 2 and May 3. And now, I think where it gets interesting is, like, what is the middle ground for those guys? Because we don't know what the floor is. You know, the floor is it's a bust, right?
Russell Wilson, Mac Jones.
Like, I'm trying to think, like, what the middle ground is. Because, like, can you end up being okay if he ends up not living up to expectations but gets close to it? Kind of like what I would say Trevor Lawrence has been so far.
Jaden Daniels' middle ground is probably like Justin Fields.
Okay, that's a little disappointing, I would say. The Drake May one, I think, is probably Lawrence, right?
Yeah. Mac Jones.
I don't know if he'd be that bad. Like, Mac Jones, let's admit, was a bust.
The thing with Drake May is he's pretty athletic. Like, I think people are underselling just how athletic he can be. So I think he's got a little bit more there. It might be closer to like a Brock Purdy. Honestly.
Okay. Yeah.
If he's in the right situation, obviously, we've seen what Brock Purdy could look like. But if Brock Purdy was playing for New England, I don't think he looks like this. I think he looks like a 17th best quarterback in the NFL.
I think he looks like Mr. Irrelevant if he's playing for New England right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the downside there.
And I think Williams, Russ might be a good one. But granted, Russ didn't really
holding
run
on the ball
a lot.
too long.
Yeah, but he has a cannon of an arm, just like Russ did when he came in the league.
Like that.
But I think when you ask those questions, that's why I kind of would go, okay, who would I rather have? Then when I'm looking at who their middle ground is, I still think Williams has the higher ceiling, and that's why I took him over Daniels and Drake May.
Next thing up here, as we go through some of these comparisons, I want to get through the wide receivers with you guys as well. He has Marvin Harrison Jr. compared to A.J. Green. He has Malik Neighbors compared to Stephon Diggs, and Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington, compared to Jamar Chase.
Jeez.
A legitimately special draft this year for quarterback and wide receiver. If your comparisons are Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, and A.J. Green, how would you compare those? How would you rank those 3 guys?
I think you got
3 very different players.
I was going to say, I mean, from what we've seen in their careers thus far with Stephon Diggs and Jamar Chase, I think you probably have to go Diggs first and then Jamar Chase. But I guess, I mean, you have to put A.J. Green above all of them. But, man, the Stephon Diggs comp is very intriguing to me. If you get the right route runner with the right quarterback, that could be a dangerously sneaky addition by a team in the top 5, top 10.
I so badly want to see one of these guys in Arizona with Kyler Murray. I think it'd be so much fun.
I'd really love to see one of those. Well, I mean, I want to see one of those guys in Chicago. After they draft the quarterback, I want to see one of those guys in Chicago with DJ Moore.
I hope we get one in Arizona, one with the Chargers, and one with Chicago.
Chargers don't need any more damn wide receivers. They keep drafting them, and none of them turn out to be good.
I know, but the guy they got last year was terrible.
Mike Williams, what's his face from TSU?
I think, and I also think for the Chargers, at some point you just got to start preparing for Keenan Allen and Mike Williams to.
Well, Mike Williams is never there for you for more than
Mike
5 games.
Cut in this offseason.
There we go. There's why you need another
He
wide
screams
receiver.
Kansas City Chief.
Guys, correct me if I'm wrong. Was A.J. Green more of like a downfield threat, like deep ball guy early on in his career? I think
beast.
when you're having this conversation about these guys, and who was his comp again? It was
Marvin Harrison.
I think if you're looking for a guy that's going to end up, you need someone that is a deep ball threat. I think if you're a team looking for that, you're looking for Marvin Harrison. If you're not, you're looking for
Neighbors. The Stephon Diggs comp, right?
No, I think you're looking for the Jamar
really?
Chase one. Because I think Jamar, physical, great wide receiver. I think if you're looking for a true number one, I think you're looking at those other two. If you're looking for more like I don't want to call him a complimentary piece, but if you're looking for like, hey, we think we've got our number one, we need that number two guy that's going to be a threat down the field, that's where I think Marvin Harrison fits in. And that's why the Bears make a ton of sense.
It's going to be a fun draft. We're going to have plenty more coverage for you guys throughout this offseason in the NFL. We're just a few weeks away from the start of free agency, and we're, I think, a week away from the NFL Combine out in Indianapolis. So a lot of fun to be had. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we're getting into the junk drawer. 1 o'clock, Jeff Marek's going to join the show, one of the best NHL insiders in the business. But next, the Cardinals are trying to build a lineup this year in a way we really haven't seen in recent memory. We'll try to explain it next year on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Nice win for the Blues yesterday as they shut out the Islanders 4-0 on home ice. Brandon Saad and 2 from Pavel Buchnevich in the second period combined for the 3 fastest goals in franchise history for the Blues. And Pavel Buchnevich capped off the empty netter for a hat trick last night to make it 4-0 Blues. So the Blues pick up their 30th win of the season, and they still hold that second wild card spot in the Western Conference, tied with Nashville for 62 points on the season, though the Blues have a game in hand. And they'll be in action tomorrow as they hit the road to take on the Red Wings. It'll be an early one. Pregame at 10 o'clock, puck drop at 11 here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. And after that, you'll get some college basketball, Kansas and Texas, tip-off at 5. And then on Sunday, you'll get Michigan and Purdue, that one at 1 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter Update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So it's not often that you see a Cardinals team that has multiple hitters in the lineup age 26 or younger that are expected to, finish with at least 15 home runs in the regular season. Alex, if I just went through and said, hey, Nolan Gorman, do you think he has at least 15 home runs this season? Yes or no?
Yep.
Jordan Walker, do you think he has at least 15 home runs this season?
Yep.
Lars Nootbaar, at least 15 home runs for him as well?
Yep.
Cool. Those are 3 guys in the Cardinals lineup this season that we believe will do exactly that. You know how many times that's been done for the Cardinals in the last 60 years?
Once.
Twice. No, twice.
3. 3 times in the last 60 years have they had at least 3 players in the lineup finish with at least 15 home runs at age 26 or younger. It was 1993, 2000, and 2016. That is what they're trying to accomplish this year. And they're doing so at the same time that they have the classic veterans in the lineup that we've come to know and love in recent Cardinals memory, where you've got Contreras and Goldie and Arenado. Those are the 3 guys, the big bats in the middle of your order that you're counting on. And you're surrounding them with 3 young players that have the potential to be 800-plus OPS guys with Gorman, Nootbaar, and Jordan Walker. I think, and this is just a hypothesis of mine, guys, I think Cardinals fans, generally speaking, have been underestimating, relative to my expectations, what this lineup is capable of this season. And I think it is because of what we just referenced. You don't really have a reference point, we don't, of recent Cardinals memory of a lineup that's constructed this way. The Cardinals typically don't rely this heavily on young, unproven bats. It's very rare that you see something like that. They've done it much more often in the rotation or in the bullpen where they've got young pitchers that they're saying, you know what, I think this guy's going to take the next step. And for most of the 21st century, that's worked out until, last year. But in the lineup, they don't do that very often. They come into seasons, and when you think of lineups that you've seen that have raked for the Cardinals, it's veterans. It's dudes that have proven it up and down the order. It's guys they traded for or signed in free agency that you've seen go in and do it year in and year out in the major leagues. Do you think that's a big part, Alex, in your mind? And I'm not trying to, sway the audience. This is something that we were talking about a little bit earlier today because T-Bone mentioned in our text thread that he thinks Walker has a chance to go 30 doubles and 20 home runs this year. And I was thinking about the young talent that could do that on this roster. And it's rare. It almost never happens for the Cardinals. Do you think that's influencing the lack of belief in this lineup?
I got to think it's part of it. At least it's a reason why I'm a little concerned. I mean, it goes back to pitching first things first with this team. But when you get to the offense, I was telling you guys our show prep this morning, while I grew up watching Cardinals in the Walt Jocketty era, it feels a lot like what Dodgers or Phillies fans feel like right now, to where when you saw one of the better players on another team, you saw it and you say, he'll be a Cardinal at some point. And think of it, the Scott Rowlands, the Jim Edmonds, the Larry Walkers, the Matt Morrises, Woody Williams, Chris Carpenter, Mark Mulders. You go down the list all the way up to when the Cardinals signed Carlos Beltran and Lance Berkman. And you said, well, that great player elsewhere will be a Cardinal. That was the era that I grew up with the Cardinals. And now you're at the point to where you're not worried so much about going out there to get those stars elsewhere. You did it with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, but it's more along the lines of we're banking on our younger players. And to get to the point to where the frustration you believe comes from, BK, makes sense. It's not so much that you are hoping that these guys become that, because Walker and Gorman, I think they can be stars. I think the frustration becomes because you've been promised for the last 5 to 6 years that, well, this guy's the next big thing. That guy's the next big thing. This guy's going to be our next big bat, Tyler O'Neill. He's going to be our star center fielder that you never have to worry about again. And all of those guys laid eggs for the expectations that you had, all the way up into a Dylan Carlson, to where we felt like you'll have to pry him through our dead, cold hands. And now we're talking about it being a fourth outfielder. So, yeah, I think Cardinals fans have had certainty for so long that when you tell them to just trust the process and wait for these young players to become stars, you don't want to do that because it hasn't worked in the last 5 years. And you're thinking, well, if it hasn't worked yet, I'm going to stop listening to you at some point.
And while I understand that, and I genuinely do, I think that the caliber of prospects that we're talking about here is quite different with guys like Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker specifically. And I think the proven productivity when healthy on the field with Lars Nootbaar is more reminiscent of some of the guys that we've seen in Cardinals past. Like, some guys just fall through the cracks. And for whatever reason, they aren't seen as legit top-level prospects, and then they get to the big league level. And we've seen this a lot with the Cardinals. They just start producing. And it happens year after year after year. Matt Carpenter, they're different players, obviously, for a million different reasons. But Carp wasn't a big-time prospect in the Cardinal system, but he gets up to the big leagues, and you're like, hey, that guy can hit. And he just kept hitting. And with Lars Nootbaar, if he can stay healthy, and that's my biggest question with him, is can you stay on the field? If he can, I have no doubt in my mind that he'll hit 15 home runs this year and get an on-base percentage of like 360 or better. And if he is that, it's a borderline all-star at the major league level. Like, that's a guy that gets $20 million per year, because that is essentially Brandon Nimmo 2.0. Brandon Nimmo this year is expected to play left field for the New York Mets. It's like a one-for-one comparison. Go look up their numbers if you want to. So I view him as being the most underrated and maybe biggest surprise of this trio of players that we're talking about here. But you can even extend it beyond them. Like, Brendan Donovan is one of those types of players. He's not in this category of 26 years or older. He's 27. He's right in that vein of being a young player that's expected to contribute in a significant way at the major league level this year. That's more than half of the top 7 players that we're expecting to be in the lineup essentially every day. And a lot of them have been able to do this at the big league level for 1 or 2 years thus far. This is when you should see it. That year 2, 3, that turn, that is when you typically start to see guys kind of turn the corner of, okay, I understand what I'm going to see pitching-wise. I understand what it looks like to make adjustments at the big league level, and now it's time to produce. So if it doesn't happen this year, it might not happen. But I think this is the season that they kind of put it all together. And when you look around the big leagues and you look at some of the teams that you want the Cardinals to emulate, they construct their lineup like this. They have guys that are big-time prospects that go through the system and then contribute at the major league level, and then, boom, take off and are a big part of the driving force behind a top 5 to 7 offense in the big leagues. And I think that the Cardinals are going to have that this year, and it's something that they really have not had at all in recent memory. So I think this is a chance to be a special lineup, especially when you look at what they have with the young guys. Gorman, Nootbaar, Walker, I think are all going to have at least 15 home runs this year. The last time the Cardinals had 3 guys do that, age 26 or younger, was 2016 with Aledmus Diaz, Randall Grichuk, and Steven Piscotty. I feel like this would be a little different with the 3 guys that could potentially do it in 2024. Coming up in about 10 minutes, we will talk to Jeff Marek, Sportsnet NHL analyst, one of the best NHL insiders in the business. The Juncture coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. Jeff Marek coming up here in just a minute. Guys, I want to tell you about a student from Calgary who goes to school in Vancouver and saves himself about $1,200 a month.
Oh, T-Bone, listen up.
Wow. That's
So
impressive.
twice a week, he flies from Calgary to Vancouver to go to school. He goes round trip, and when he does so, he's paying about $150 per round trip. So he spends about $1,200 a month on flights to get from Calgary to Vancouver. And you may be asking yourself, guys, why doesn't he just move to Vancouver? Well, because to live in Vancouver, it's about $2,500 a month on average for rent to live in the city. So instead of doing so, he decided, I'm not paying that. I'm going to save myself the money. This is an outlandish amount to request for rent. So he just lives in Calgary with his family, Alex, and goes to school college while he's in Vancouver a couple of times a week. It's a 1-hour flight. So he's going there and back in the time that it would typically take to travel throughout a really busy city anyways. Like if you go to Atlanta, you're spending an hour in your car to get to and from. This guy is one of the biggest geniuses that I could possibly imagine.
Is he?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a thing called find a roommate. You could, split rent with and pay $1,250.
A 2-bedroom apartment would be more than the $2,500.
Find a
It
roommate.
is so funny that came out from Alex Ferrari.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't
of all
do it.
people to say
I
that.
thought he would love it.
No, I would do it. Or the other thing is, how about you find a school to go to in Calgary?
Well, maybe it's a good school, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure Calgary has good schools as well. This is stupid.
It's like choosing between going to Mizzou or going to Lewis and Clark, the Harvard of the Midwest.
Wash you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One or the other.
The Harvard of Oldie University.
Yeah.
This is stupid.
I thought this was a
actually,
clever
don't
way
mind.
to get through without having to spend an
You're
arm
telling me
and a
that
leg
you'd
on it.
love to spend all that time waiting to get on a flight, get off a
see,
flight,
that's the
and then
genius
go
of
sit
it.
in class
No,
for
It's
school?
only an hour.
And this is the genius to your point of it.
that.
You know what you can do while you're sitting at the airport? Your homework.
Yep.
Exactly.
You know what I don't
don't
want
have to drive.
You know what I don't want to do after dealing with a flight for an hour? More school.
Coming
I
up
don't think that's an
next,
issue.
Jeff Marek, Sportsnet
Stupid.
NHL analyst, one of the best in the business. We'll talk to him about Pavel Buchnevich, Jordan Binnington, so much more here on BK and Ferrario.
wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, we are live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. The Blues last night with a big win, 4-0 at home against the New York Islanders. And as of today, your St. Louis Blues would make up the final spot in the Western Conference playoffs. They are technically tied with the Nashville Predators in points, but they do have the points percentage because they've played one fewer game thus far than the Nashville Predators. We're only a couple of weeks away at this point from the NHL trade deadline, and there aren't a whole lot of people, Alex, that I believe are better at covering this time of the year than Elliot Friedman and Jeff Marek. We are big listeners of the 32 Thoughts podcast. The 32 Thoughts podcast has some of the best information you can have. And the other day in the written version of that, Elliot Friedman wrote about what Pavel Buchnevich's future could hold here in St. Louis and the asking price of potentially multiple first-round picks. And right now, we're going out to the 101 ESPN hotline to talk it all over with Jeff Marek, one of the co-hosts of the 32 Thoughts podcast. He also hosts the aptly named Jeff Marek Show, and you can find his work on Sportsnet as well. Jeff, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
No problem. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me today. You know, it's Elliot and I were just talking about the St. Louis Blues on the radio show this afternoon, and reminded of one of our favorite lines. Allegedly, this is what Doug Armstrong likes to say, general manager of the St. Louis Blues. You can ask about anybody, but you won't like the price.
I thought you were going to go with we have to be able to stab the opponent in the brain, twist the knife, and kill him off. I thought that was the phrase you were going to go with.
Yeah, you know, in Doug Armstrong's history, it's more like, I don't care if we're in a playoff spot. If I don't think we can win the cup, everything must go.
Right. Well, let's start there, Jeff, because, I mean, at the beginning of the season, we brought up Pavel Buchnevich's name because anytime you got somebody who's close to an unrestricted free agency, you're thinking, okay, Doug Armstrong is ruthless when it comes to the honesty with his team. And now, of course, you're in a playoff spot. You've performed well. Where do you see this Blues team going when they get to March 8th?
This is going to make for a really bad sports talk radio answer, but I really don't know. Because, like, honestly, like, they rolled through Toronto and like, they looked awful. Like, they looked terrible. But then at other times, we've seen the St. Louis Blues, like, mow through teams like a hog into truffles. Like, I really don't know, in a lot of ways, what to make of this team. And Doug Armstrong and you guys are a lot closer to it than I am, obviously. But I think the St. Louis Blues are probably one of those teams, and there's only a handful, where we look at it and say, this is kind of like trying to catch a handful of water. Like, I have no idea what this team is because they look like so many different versions of the same team. But at the end of all of it, like, if he wants to take Pavel Buchnevich to market, like, this isn't just a rental. Like, how many times have you heard teams this year specifically say, we're not going to pay these prices for rentals? Well, Pavel Buchnevich is not a rental. So if Doug Armstrong decides that they don't have the team or the chase isn't going to be worth it this year, I mean, he can really help move this St. Louis Blues program forward by moving Pavel Buchnevich. There will be teams that want him. And I think what's most attractive, other than the skill set, is the fact that he's still under team control for another year, as you guys well know.
And he does everything, Jeff. Like, that's the thing that has endeared him to Blues fans over the last 3 seasons is he's on the penalty kill. He's one of the most aggressive penalty killers in the league. He's a good player on the power play. He's a 200-foot guy. If you need him to distribute, one of the better underrated passers in the league. If you need him to scored 30 goals last season, had a hat trick last night. Like, he fits in wherever you need him to in your lineup, and he's at a totally reasonable cost. And so I did want to ask you, because you have more of a sense of what's going on around the league as opposed to us, where we're just focusing mostly on one team. What do you think the value is for that? How do you think other teams around the league would look at it if the Blues said, you know what, yeah, he is going to be made available via trade?
You know, if you look at the going rate, like, you always try to measure it off against other trades that we've seen. And, a couple of years ago when the Philadelphia Flyers moved Kyrou to the Florida Panthers, essentially that was a deal for 2 first-round draft picks. Now, he was on an expiring contract. So if you look at what, like, say, the Pittsburgh Penguins are trying to get for Jake Gensel, that's 2 first-round draft picks. Now, that can either be 2 actual picks or a first-round draft pick player and a pick to go along with it. Like, you wonder if, Gensel goes to the Edmonton Oilers, if it's a play like Philip Broberg plus a first-round pick, that gets that one done. I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's the very, very minimum, and it's probably going to be more than that to get Pavel Buchnevich away from the St. Louis Blues. And that's why I'd say, like, if they really want to move things forward here quickly, I know it'll sting, like, right away. Like, how many times have we seen this before? The minute you trade someone, the next order of business is trying to get someone else who could do the same things that the guy you just traded did. We see that a lot amongst defensemen, but St. Louis would be right back in that same boat. And another thing we should throw in as far as, what Buchnevich does is he does all of this in a top 6 capacity. Like, it really is remarkable what this guy brings. So, to me, the minimum, like, even just to have the conversation, you better have the equivalent of 2 first-round picks ready.
And a lot of this question, kind of the backdrop of it is, are you going to extend him? Because this summer he's extension eligible, and he's going to command, I would imagine, a lofty number. Jeff, what kind of number do you think he could command, and how much is that influencing, in your mind, the possibility of him being traded elsewhere?
Boy, I'm so bad at that one, because it means so many different things to so many different to so many different teams as well. I'd hate to just throw out a frivolous answer without thinking about it. But he's going to cost. Like, he's a premium player, he's a top 6 player who does all the things you guys have just documented. So, it's I can't give you an exact number for Pavel Buchnevich, but put it this way, it's not going to be cheap. And especially, like, here's the other thing that I wonder. Like, last year at trade deadline, Ivan Barbashev was the most impactful player that we saw. And every year you wonder, like, okay, who's going to be the most impactful? Like, Matthias Ekholm looked great for the Edmonton Oilers, and that really moved them forward and helped shore up their defense. Unfortunately, they flamed out against Vegas, but they really did a good bit of business bringing in Matthias Ekholm, who had term. But you can make the argument that the Kingmaker deal, or the Stanley Cup maker deal, was the St. Louis Blues deal with Ivan Barbashev. And, playoff performance always juices the contract. So already he's going to command a high number. But if he ends up playing Kingmaker for some team, maybe even Vegas again, we all believe Vegas is going to go out there and get another winger. Is it Gensel? Could you see a return of Riley Smith? That would take a third team. I don't know. But all of a sudden, if you win a Stanley Cup, that just drives the price that much higher.
So Jeff, I want to ask this because you've seen a lot of Blues over these last couple of weeks. They've been on Sportsnet an awful lot when they played against Vancouver, and of course the 2 games against the Maple Leafs. If Doug Armstrong gets to the point where you move Pavel Buchnevich, I'm just assuming this, but you look at that and you say, okay, we're not sure if he matches up with the timeline of the top line that we need to get out of this, retool, and start winning games. When you saw Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou for the games that they have played, did that look like a top line to you?
I think, like, you guys know this, I'm the president of the Robert Thomas fan club. Like, I think he's one of the premier playmakers in the NHL. Jordan Kyrou, as you guys know, absolutely flies, and Pavel Buchnevich ties it all together. Like, the key to making any line successful, I think, is you have 3 players that do 3 very distinctive things. Like, you're going to have, like, some type of skill overlap, but on this line, the most dynamic lines in the NHL are the ones where 3 guys do 3 separate things. There's no point in having 2 of the same guys on the line. And I think that's what makes this line so attractive and so successful as well. Are they a legit top line in the NHL? Absolutely. And I think that a lot of it is obviously the speed of Kyrou, the creativity of Robert Thomas, and all the intangibles that Pavel Buchnevich brings. So a long-winded way of me saying yes, this is a legit top line in the NHL. And I think for that matter, it's kind of like a win-win situation here for St. Louis, because if you don't trade him, you win because you get to keep Pavel Buchnevich. If you do end up moving him, you can get a real nice price tag for this guy.
Jeff Marek is our guest here on 101 ESPN for just another couple of minutes. He's the co-host of the 32 Thoughts podcast, which we listen to religiously, also a host of the Jeff Marek Show. Jeff, I wanted to ask you about Jordan Binnington. He's been a lightning rod for discussion here in St. Louis since the moment that he got up to the NHL, first with the Cup run and then everything that's happened in between. When you talk to people around the league, or you watch him yourself, what is the general consensus of how you view Jordan Binnington relative to other netminders in the NHL?
I think people get distracted. I think people get distracted away from the skill set that Jordan Binnington has and just how good a goaltender is there, and they get carried away with the. And listen, this is Jordan Binnington's fault. Like he's not shy about this. I mean, he's a really aggressive goaltender, sort of, in the tradition of Billy Smith, Ron Hextall, maybe most recently Dwayne Rollison. Like, he's a guy that isn't shy about defending himself and his turf. And I think people get carried away with that and forget that there's a really good goaltender there. I think people get carried away with the sideshow. I mean, I like it. I think it's part of what makes him him. And I think if he got rid of that part of the game, as much as I'm sure players and coaches have said, knock it off, just play. We don't need any of that. I don't know if he'd be the same player if he did. And for that, every player has a different motivation. Every different player has to play a particular way to get the most out of himself. And I think that's just in Jordan Binnington's DNA. I know whenever the conversation turns to Jordan Binnington, it's always about will someone just give him his fight so he can get it out of his system? And I always come back with and say, A, the key to Jordan Binnington is he's an excellent goaltender. And B, the fact that he wants to do all of this extracurricular stuff is all part of what goes into making Jordan Binnington the athlete that he is. Some guys need that, some guys don't. Not every goaltender is the same. So I think people get distracted by all the sideshow that comes with Binnington, and they tend to forget that there's an exceptional netminder there. And as someone, as a Canadian, I would like to see him do very well, thank you very much, because we're all very scared of the United States at the next four nations, to say nothing of the Olympics. So let's just not forget here that Jordan Binnington might be the great Canadian hopeful in net the next time for international hockey.
I love hearing you say that, because I hope so too, because the look in people's faces when they see Jordan Binnington's name for Team Canada will honestly be priceless. But Jeff, the reason the reason we're so optimistic here in St. Louis about the Blues' potential of getting into a playoffs is because of Jordan Binnington. Now, yes, they have been a roller coaster this season, to where 1 minute we feel like they're going for a top 10 pick. The next minute we're convincing ourselves that they could take down one of the top teams. Big picture for you. Yeah. Do you view the Blues as a team that is starting to exit out of this retool and start entering what Doug Armstrong talks about as getting back to winning?
I still think they still need to do some work with their depth up front. Listen, it's not exactly Sammy Blais is probably playing, and punching over his weight right now. Kasperi Kapanen probably the same way as well. Could probably stand to do something with the blue line. So I think they're getting there. It's like right now the pieces aren't quite fitting. To the previous point about the top line, that's ensconced and that's solid, and we'll see what happens with Buchnevich here. But things haven't fit properly, I don't think, for Doug Armstrong's liking, or just from an outside looking in view. There's still some players that are probably playing a little bit too high in the lineup, and that's just because they haven't come close yet to icing the team that I think they want in their minds.
All right, Jeff, we'll get you out of here on this. The team that is most likely that will be the most active leading into this year's NHL trade deadline, which is just a couple of weeks away, is blank.
I think the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins have a lot of things on the go, whether it's Jake Gensel, whether it's Riley Smith. A lot of us are really starting to wonder now about Erik Karlsson's future with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and there's always something that you're not aware of. I mean, listen, that press conference from Kyle Dubas the other day was pretty revealing. Normally, Dubas keeps things really close, but even Dubas saying, I've tried to do something going back to All-Star, and it just hasn't been there yet. That speaks volumes. That's Kyle Dubas essentially screaming to the league, we're open for business. Please bring your offers.
Would you rather have Jake Gensel or Pavel Buchnevich?
Two different kinds of players. Like it's not like you're comparing chalk and cheese. You're comparing apples and oranges. You're comparing chalk and cheese. I think that if you want someone that's gonna score goals in your top six, I think you're looking at Jake Gensel in that situation. But if you want a sort of more well-rounded player who's more of a Swiss Army knife, you go with Pavel Buchnevich.
Jeff, I apologize. One more, because you are the most interesting man to us here in St. Louis. If you're Doug Armstrong, yes, we love our Jeff Marek, that's for sure. If you're Doug Armstrong and you're looking at this Blues at the trade deadline, forward or defenseman, what would you try and pursue to give them a chance to do damage in the playoffs?
I want to say defenseman, but I mean the market's really hot for defense right now. Right, and it's not as if anyone. I mean, everyone's waiting to see what happens with Noah Hanifin. I mean, the biggies seem to be, Noah Hanifin with the Calgary Flames, Sean Walker, maybe Nick Seeler. I heard there was one team that tried to get both in a package. Obviously, that hasn't happened. I mean, in an ideal world, I think they do something with their blue line. But I think right now, what's available, because there's so many wingers that are available. Like you look at all the trade boards right now. It is winger, 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 winger. That's probably where the St. Louis Blues can get frisky here at the deadline, if they're going to add.
He's Jeff Marek, Sportsnet NHL analyst and insider. You can find him on the Jeff Marek Show and, of course, the 32 Thoughts podcast. Give him a follow on Twitter to find all of his great work over at Jeff Marek. Jeff, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for being generous with it for us today. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
Yeah, no problem. And for your listeners as well, Anthony Mantha might be a wild card here. Washington Capitals, he's got 18 goals so far this season, has size, has wonderful hands, hasn't been able to put it together yet. But if there's someone that can unlock, maybe, I know a lot of coaches have tried, guys, but if Drew Bannister can sort of unlock that, I do wonder if there could be a fit between Mantha and the St. Louis Blues.
I'm so annoyed right now. I'm so annoyed right now, Jeff.
I love you. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Alex does a Ferrario 5 and literally yesterday brought him up as one of the 5 potential additions that the Blues
He
could
was
make
my
at the
number
deadline.
one, Jeff.
Unbelievable.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, that's great minds or fools seldom differ.
Exactly. I'm going with great minds. Between your Jordan Binnington take and Anthony Mantha, Jeff, this is just outstanding. You just made my weekend.
Alex on cloud 9. Nobody needs this. Jeff, get out of here. Appreciate the time, but you're done. You're done. You've done too much to this guy's head over next to me.
They have to widen the door frames to fit him in now. Fine, to fit that head in. Okay.
Jeff, you're the best.
Right,
Thank you, sir. Have a good weekend.
That's Jeff Marek, one of the best in the business, even though he agrees way too much.
I mean, let's just be honest here. What we just did was just add on. We just poured gasoline onto the fire. That is the Ferrario 5.
All I know is we're never having him on again.
He's been banished.
Let me know the next time.
I love Jeff Marek, and I think he's genuinely one of the best hockey interviews that you can get.
That's so fine. We'll have a Ferrario and Marek show from 11 to 2. Let me know the next time a national analyst backs up the T-Bone 3 or the BK buildup.
Somebody said Alex needs a cigarette.
Oh, cigarette and a sandwich.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Man, this ain't coffee in here. Between the Binnington, the Mantha, and even the Robert Thomas thing, that might have been the best interview we've ever done.
The Mantha thing is really interesting. I'm not going to lie to you. It's really.
But you heard what he said too. If there's a coach that could unlock the potential of him, maybe it's Drew Bannister.
Yeah, I mean every coach that's ever had him has said that, but like
he's only been on 2 teams, Detroit and Washington.
And the other thing about him is even if you just get what he is, with Washington right now at his cap hit, that's not good enough. If you bring him here and he's on pace this year for like 25 goals, and
you're replacing him with
45 points.
Yeah.
Like if he's that player and he's playing 14, 15 minutes a night, he's a third-line winger for you, dude, that is such a massive upgrade compared to what you have currently on your roster. So That alone here would be good enough. The problem is he's been expected to be more, right? Like, if somebody trades for Jordan Kyrou and instead of being an $8 million player, maybe he goes there, the Blues have to eat some of the cap, and it becomes a $6 million player for them, he could be the player that he is today, and he's considered a really good value pick for somebody else. But here in St. Louis, he was expected to be something.
But see, that's why I.
changed.
But that's why
like
I would.
Randall Grichuk. Randall Grichuk went on elsewhere. He was the same player elsewhere that he was here, but without any of the hype. He's gone on to be a really successful player, despite being, again, the exact same player.
But that's why I would argue he would make the most sense for St. Louis, because Edmonton trades for him, Boston trades for him.
That's a good point.
They want him to be a top guy. They're expecting 30 goals out of him. Blues fans would just be like, we want you to be better than Kapanen.
Better than Sammy Blais. Go
Better
to the
than
exact
Sammy
spot that
Blais.
Sammy Blais has been in the lineup for most of the year, and instead of giving us 0 goals, give us 20.
Because that's what you don't have depth scoring. Yeah. If you're going to back up everything, you just need somebody who can provide more scoring down your lineup, and you bring in somebody that you're like, okay, cool, let's see what you could provide. We tried Verana, and it didn't work. Let's see if you could do what Verana couldn't do.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. If you missed any of that conversation with Jeff Marek, I believe it is well worth your time. 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
Coming up next, so Tommy Edman's not playing right now. Mason Wynn's not playing in a game tomorrow. So who's playing shortstop for the Cardinals? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
So the Cardinals are going to be without Mason Wynn and Tommy Edman this weekend. Those are your two top options at shortstop heading into the season.
Was that Mo singing Good Vibrations? That's what I'm picking up good vibrations.
Now, the word on the street down in Jupiter is that everything's going to be fine for Mason Wynn.
Well, how trustworthy.
He was swinging a bat today and apparently looked good. He's been doing everything away from the bat that you would typically expect. He's been taking grounders. He's been throwing. So it doesn't seem like this is a significant injury for Mason Wynn. But it is a reminder of how little depth the Cardinals have right now at the shortstop position behind him. They are going into the season with Mason Wynn as the starter, and if he goes down for any prolonged period of time, they're going to have to move Tommy Edman from center field to shortstop, and they'll just plug in Dylan Carlson in center.
Kill time, kill time, kill time, kill time.
It's bad. It's
so
bad.
Tommy Edman comes out of center field.
Alex, if this is their plan, do you think they need to go back to market to find a shortstop that can be somebody that actually plays the position as a backup?
So let me understand this correctly. So Edman is
asking a question while he's dying.
So Edman is I'll kill some time here a little bit while he gets a cough drop. Edman is not your center fielder. Dylan Carlson is your center fielder, and Edman goes to shortstop because of Mason Wynn.
Unless he's hurt, in which case you
don't have a
shortstop where they're going to potentially have to play Brendan Donovan at the position, according to what they've been saying. Internal.
Yeah, that's brutal. Yeah, I think you not only need to go to the market to find yourself a shortstop to have the backup plan, but I also think you'll need a backup plan for center field if he's going to be that long. So, no good vibrations, as John Mozeliak would say, if you're talking about camp and those two guys. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. Who are the integral parts of this team in terms of defensive improvement? Center field, shortstop, catcher. Not as worried about catcher. Wilson Contreras will be fine, especially with no Jack Flaherty. Very concerned if we're talking about putting somebody else in center field and Brendan Donovan at shortstop.
I don't personally have any problem with Dylan Carlson getting some run in center field.
I don't have a problem if it's a month. I have a problem if this becomes like a 3-4 month thing.
But you can't plan for that right now. The expectation is that
you probably should.
Edman will be available sometime early in the season. Even if it's not technically opening day, it could be kind of similar. Remember last year, I think it was Newbar that started the season on IL, and a couple of weeks into the year, he was fine. But they needed a couple of weeks. You might see something similar with Edman. Where I do think this becomes a problem is at shortstop. I think that's the bigger concern to me than center field. I don't want Edman moving around this year. I just want him to play a position and stay there. So if you can go to market and get Nick Ahmed, that would be something I'd be interested in.
So and
I don't have as much. Like, Ahmed is a pure defensive-minded shortstop, which is fine because it fits right into what the Cardinals would be looking for.
I feel like you got guys that can do that, though. Like, why not give Thomas Sajaci a shot at shortstop if you're down that path?
Because I don't even think he's a shortstop. He's like a second baseman, is what Sajaci
apparently
is.
Brendan Donovan is, too, and you're like, well, let's try this one out.
Yeah,
I'm not okay with that either. That's why I think they need to go back to market.
Yeah, I think when you look at them, and if they have to go back to the market, like I'm not sure they're there yet.
God, Paul DeYoung's coming
Mason,
back, isn't he?
He's on a contract, sadly. The White Sox gave him an opportunity. I think right now you're fine, but it does become an issue where, like, if this win thing is worse than what they're letting on, which right now I don't think is the case, but who knows with the Cardinals, then yeah, I'm totally with BK. They'll have to go to the market and find somebody shortstop-wise because unlike in center field, Carlson at least I think is an average center fielder, which is fine to get away with if you had to do it even on a long extended period in a long run.
Man.
Where you cannot be below average at is shortstop because it's the most crucial position in baseball right now. Like look at shortstops across baseball, and I'm not even talking from the offensive standpoint. All the stars are really good at short defensively. Look at Francisco Lindor, very good at shortstop. You look at, I'm trying to think of who else has recently signed there.
Where?
Shortstop. I'm trying to think of drawing a blank here.
Trey Turner, Corey Seager.
Trey Turner, very good defensively at shortstop.
Correa.
Corey Seager, very good. Carlos Correa, very good. Like every shortstop it is a star-studded position now in Major League Baseball and is very deep, all those guys put up great offensive numbers, but they're all very good defensively. And if you had to settle for, like, okay, we have to go back to the market, I'm not worried about your offense taking a hit. Why? Because I'm not expecting much offense out of Mason Wynn anyways.
You could have got Tim Anderson for $5 million.
Yeah, but he probably wanted to start. And so I'm guessing
you might be starting for a while, though, if the injury's not there. And then they're going to have to ramp him back up and say, oh, he needs to get a little bit more reps. Yeah.
I mean, Wynn is potentially going to be starting on Monday. Like, this is not like a big injury for Mason Wynn. I'm talking purely about depth. I don't think Tim Anderson was ever going to be interested in coming to the Cardinals because he knows he's not starting here. But like a Nick Ahmed, this is a guy that is purely a glove. And if you're going into the season and your 26th man right now is probably going to be Alec Burleson. Listen, I like Alec Burleson. I think Alec Burleson is a valuable piece to this roster. I think you might need a backup shortstop. Like, Jose Fermin, I don't think is the dude that you're looking for here.
Go down the path and the narrative that the Cardinals like in terms of old veterans. Go get Brandon Crawford, who's 30.
He's terrible defensively.
He's 37 years old, though. Veteran leadership.
Nick Ahmed, Elvis Andrews, Kike Hernandez, probably more the first two than the Kike Hernandez side, though, because he's more of what you have already internally. I think one of Nick Ahmed or Elvis Andrews are players that I would have on speed dial right now. I don't think this is not one of those things. Like, I think a number 2 starter could be the type of thing that prevents them from competing on a meaningful level once they get into the playoffs. Something that I think this team doesn't look at as much as they should, though, is what a lack of depth can mean for them. Last year that took place in the rotation, but I remember we had that clip from Mike Claiborne. It was, I think, 2 years ago, where at the end of spring training, the morning show asked him, hey, what's your assessment of the Cardinals coming out of spring training? He said, it's a very thin roster. If the top of the roster performs well and you don't have a lot of injuries, this could be a very good team. But it's thin. And they don't have a lot of guys that are backfilling yet. At most positions, I no longer feel that way any longer. In center field, like, if Tommy Edman were to go down and not be available for the first 3 weeks of the season, you have Dylan Carlson, and if Victor Scott's great in spring training, you have him as an option there as well. In the corner spots in the outfield, while it's not ideal, you've got some guys that can play those spots. Like, if you need Brendan Donovan to go out there and play for a while, he can, and he's more than capable of doing so. You don't have a backup at shortstop other than Tommy Edman, who himself might not be available for you for the first couple of weeks. And frankly, a guy coming off of an injury with a wrist that's learning a new position in the outfield, I just want him to focus on that position. You're going to have days where Mason Wynn needs a day off. I don't want to just say, okay, yeah, on those days I'm having a guy that's not actually a shortstop playing that position. You need somebody for that spot on your roster. And right now it seems like they're just kind of throwing their hands up and be like, not really sure what we're going to do there, but hopefully we figure it out as we go. They need their version this year of when they brought in a few years ago. They saw the young guys for the first couple of weeks of spring training and said to themselves, oh boy, we need Corey Dickerson here. And then eventually they signed Albert Pujols. So they had their right and left side DHs that went into the season as their starters there. This year, that version of a signing that you get midway through spring training and you get somebody, it's Nick Ahmed or it's Elvis Andrews. I'm calling it right now. I think they'll sign one of those guys because you can't go into the season like this. You just can't.
And I think this is a problem they created. This is why I was critical of the Matt Carpenter signing, because when we look at the 26-man roster, I know you just mentioned Alec Burleson. Maybe he becomes a man out of the picture here. They just became worse, in my opinion. Now, sure, they improved defensively because they now have a backup shortstop, but Nick Ahmed's not a bat. Matt Carpenter's not a bat at this point. And then he just sent a guy that I think, though Alec Burleson is probably not a starting outfielder, he's definitely a capable 4/5th outfielder that could be one of your first left-handed bats off the bench. And now you got worse, in my opinion. And that's all because, and you can just date it back to the Matt Carpenter signing, they put too much emphasis on this whole leadership thing to where they brought in a guy that can't hit, honestly, at this point in his career, in Matt Carpenter, and now he kind of clogs a roster spot. So now when they do need this backup shortstop, which is a need, I totally agree with, well, now I'm going, okay, well, who's then becomes the odd man out? Because Herrera's locked in here. You know, Carlson is going to be locked in here. Now maybe they just put Edman on the IL, and boom, there you fill that spot. But, okay, well, then it gets a little bit more interesting once Edman comes back from the IL. So I think the Matt Carpenter signing, once again, kind of starts to rear its ugly head a little bit. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Matt Carpenter, but it just never made sense in the first place to me from a roster construction standpoint.
Maybe he plays shortstop.
Oh, my Lord.
All you need to do is catch the ball, toss it to Arenado.
I do think they got a problem here. I mean, right now your backups, your bench is Ivan Herrera, Matt Carpenter, Dylan Carlson, and Alec Burleson. None of those guys are capable of playing shortstop.
All you needed to do was not sign Matt Carpenter and sign another veteran who could be defense.
Elvis Andrus. That's the guy. Like, if you wanted to go the veteran route, Elvis Andrus is known as a great teammate. But they needed Matt Carpenter because Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado couldn't get through the season without him, apparently. Coming up next, one's got to go. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. A fun one in St. Louis last night as the Blues shut out the Islanders 4-0. A game that featured the 3 fastest goals in Blues history. Brandon Saad, Pavel Buchnevich, and then Buchnevich again all in the second period. And then Pavel capped off the night with a hat trick on an empty net in the third to give the Blues the 4-0 win, their 30th win of the season. They move to 62 points now in the standings, tied with Nashville, who won last night as well. Tied for that final wild card spot in the Western Conference. The Blues have a game in hand on Nashville. They'll look to continue their success as they are in Detroit tomorrow to take on the Red Wings. It'll be an early one. Pregame at 10 o'clock, puck drop at 11 here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. And we'll have some college hoops for you over the weekend as well. Following that Blues game, Kansas and Texas tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And then on Sunday, Michigan and Purdue tip off at 1 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
This is BK and Ferrario. Time now for One's Gotta Go. We offer up the talking points, and you get to pick which one's gotta go on 101 ESPN.
Count that big pen.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which ones gotta go here on BK and Ferrario. One's Gotta Go segments on 101 ESPN edition. Ask Uncle Randy. Prove me wrong. Believe it or not. Or Jackson's 6-shooter. Which one's gotta go?
I think it comes down to Ask Uncle Randy and Jackson's 6-shooter.
Okay. Tell me why. You got to explain this one, man.
Well, Ask Uncle Randy kind of sounds creepy.
Oh, okay.
And I don't really understand what Jackson does in the 6-shooter. I think I'll get rid of the 6-shooter.
Hey, I think I get the point of the 6-shooter.
Do you? Because
Yeah.
I don't.
I think I do, you know.
It's like his 6 big things.
It's the sports six-pack that you hear on the fast lane.
Essentially.
So he stole from the fast lane is what you're saying.
Some are saying.
I'm going to get rid of Prove
He
Me Wrong.
doesn't even go pew, pew, pew.
Isn't Prove Me Wrong the one where Marsh is like the judge?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the judge's ruling. I disagree with the judge sometimes.
Wow.
So I'm out on Prove Me Wrong. I've had some issues with the judge's ruling before.
What judge's ruling has ticked you off so much? Because we need to let BK get through this.
I don't remember. There was one baseball one recently that I remember hearing, and I was like, no. And I was like, okay, the judge is going to say it on this. Judge Marsh is going to agree. And then he disagreed. I didn't like it.
Judge Marsh actually agreed with Patrick Waugh being aggressive, and Tanner got angry about it.
Yeah.
Which one, BK?
Those analytical nerds on the
Which one,
fast line.
Brandon?
Only one of these has some terrible singing. Believe it or not, it's got to go. 314-399-9646
you're so out
is
of
the
the
Air
band.
Comfort Service text line for One's
You know
Gotta
what?
Go.
Bradford sings better than you. I said it.
You don't believe it, though.
No, I do.
No,
I
you
believe it.
Believe it.
Sings better than you. Grant
it or
sings
not.
better than you.
That's true. One's got to go. Brisket, pulled pork, pulled chicken, or ribs. Barbecue edition.
Pulled chicken has to go. That's gross.
Pulled chicken's good.
Hey, I made some pulled chicken tonight. Why don't you just keep the chicken together?
That's good stuff.
I mean,
Because when
look,
it's pulled, it's good.
I strongly dislike ribs. Like, it's a lot of work and a lot of mess for not a lot of meat. But pulled chicken's got to go. That's just gross.
I'd actually get rid of brisket here.
What?
I'm not a big brisket guy. I just never have been. So I'm getting rid of the brisket.
That's like the.
If you go to a
that's the
barbecue
prime
spot, like
rib
the
of
number
barbecue.
one thing that they need to have. If they don't have good brisket, then I can't eat there.
It's the top sirloin of the barbecue meat, the smoked meat family.
Get it out of here.
I'd go pulled pork just because it's the one that I order the least often.
But when you make it homemade, man.
But this is the holy, not the holy trinity, but the holy quad, I guess you will.
That should be the holy trinity of get rid of chicken.
of barbecue. So
You can't eat any of that.
All right, one's got to go.
Yeah, that's
Players
true. You're a
that you-
vegan.
True. Vegetarian. Vegecurious. Players you'd give up the arch for to bring to St. Louis.
All of them. I've been there, so you know.
Jake Woolman, please. Shohei Ohtani, Lionel Messi, Connor McDavid, or Cale Makar?
Ooh.
Ohtani, Messi, McDavid, or Makar? Which one's got to go?
I'm a hockey guy. I'm going to go McDavid.
Which one's like?
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one's got to go?
It's a new segment that we're doing.
It's a new segment. One's got to go. I'm going to go Shohei. Because I'd be worried he breaks in 2 years, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, see, I'm between getting rid of McDavid or Makar, and
I'm getting rid of Makar. And I love
I
Cale
think
Makar.
that's where I am too.
But like, I've
Sure, who
seen
would want a
real-
Makar playing with Colton Parayko?
I've seen
Exactly.
excellent puck-moving defensemen in the NHL. Shohei is unlike anything I've ever seen. Messi is one of the greatest athletes that we have ever seen, regardless of sport.
Makar might be one of the best defensemen we ever
Connor
see.
McDavid is on a different level, dude, than Cale Makar. So, Cale Makar's the one
I
that's
don't
gotta
need
go.
Connor McDavid. I got Robert Thomas.
I'm kind of with BK though. I would get with Makar, but it's close with McDavid. I almost said Makar because he can do everything defensively.
Sure. But he's not as
McDavid's
much of a goal
But
scorer.
McDavid's like,
I need to put the puck in the back of the net, man. I've got distributors. I need a scorer.
What do I need
but McDavid
Shohei
is
for?
like this generation's Gretzky.
Score.
What, I could score with my guys. You're telling me that all this offense is going to be outstanding.
All right, last one. One's got to go shellfish edition. Shrimp, lobster, crab, or scallops?
Crab. I think crabs are disgusting. I've never once liked crab legs. Like, I love lobster tail. By the way, have you ever tried to make lobster tail at home, like smoke it?
Isn't it hard?
Freaking awesome. It's hard, but it's good. I don't
Was
really.
it live when you started?
No, God, no.
They scream a little bit.
Do they?
As you put them in the boiling water.
I was never allowed to do the lobster thing at Red Lobster because I was afraid to grab the lobster. They wouldn't let me do it. And I dropped one off of a tray.
It's also
fell on the
ungodly
floor.
expensive, but-
Yeah. Dropped it on the tray. It was dropped. Never mind.
Out of these four, I got to go shrimp. I like shrimp, but out of these four, it's clear.
The last one, though, I like. You said shellfish, or what was the last
Scallops.
one?
Scallops.
That's
Yeah.
another one that I'm not a big fan of. But
Yeah.
I really don't like the smell of crab legs.
Yeah, I actually like crab, and I did like shrimp. I'm allergic to it, but I'd get rid of scallops for sure.
Hold on, you're allergic to one, and you're going to keep it?
Whatever. The rewind is next.
it back with the Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
A great win for the Blues last night. Jordan Binnington, a big part of it. Pavel Buchnevich with the hat trick. Jordan Kyrou, according to Robert Thomas, was the best player on the ice. Alex, what does it mean in the big picture?
It means that the Blues have the consistency to be a playoff team. It means that they're showcasing, at least to Doug Armstrong, that this isn't a team you can sell on. And anytime you've got a Jordan Binnington in between the pipes, you got a chance. And so right now with a 3-game road trip, you come home for 1 and then 4 games going into the deadline, Blues are in a position to where at least they can try and sell their GM and front office that they should invest in them.
Blues on the road tomorrow against a pretty hot Detroit Red Wings team. Alex, they're talking apparently about re-signing David Perron, so that dream might be coming to an end. What do you think happens tomorrow with the Blues versus the Red Wings?
I think that one's going to be more of an offensive juggernaut. I would not be surprised if Joel Hofer gets the start so that you can kind of give 4 days off to Jordan Binnington. But what I hope we see is the same top line do the same thing that they just did against the Islanders, against that Red Wings team, and a subpar goaltender in Ville Husso.
Cardinals split squad performance tomorrow. T-Bone, let it go. Split squad tomorrow. The number 1 player you're looking to watch for, T-Bone, is who?
I'd say Victor Scott. Looks like he's going to be, I would assume, going to be in the starting lineup in that game that's on the road. He's the number 1 guy for me.
Marp.
Second.
You know what? Now I am going to bring up the Husso thing.
It's trash. You know it, bro. It's Mason Wynn.
Mason Wynn's not playing, so you'll stick with Marp. I will go with Jordan Walker as my guy that I want to see
Lars Nootbaar
for this week.
Burleson.
For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Grant did a fantastic job for us back in the studio today. The Fast Lane's coming up from 2 to 6. We'll talk to you guys on Monday at 11 a.m. Have a great week in St. Louis. We are out of here.